Brian, I think that we're ready to go.
Right. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Planning Commission review session for Monday, June 7th, 2021. Before we begin our regular agenda, we will have a special presentation by Rebecca Claw and Beverly Pryor on the Borough-based jail's Queens facility.
And I'll note that at the time of the approval of the borough-based jails, we committed that we would routinely be bringing back presentations to the commission. DDC kindly agreed to this at key milestones along the way. And so this is part of the continuing series of presentations. Over to you, Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca Clough, Associate Commissioner for the BBJ program. And I'd like to just give you a quick update on what's happening with the Queens facility. Next slide, please. So what we're planning to do today is give you a general program update of the Queens facility and all the various projects going on in order to make that project happen. A little bit of site context, and then design guidance development, how we came up with the design guidelines, and then how we incorporated that development information, public information, into the design guidelines. I'll be presenting the program update, the Queens facility update and site, and Beverly Pryor, our program manager from Ecom Hill joint venture, will be handling the design guidance development and design guidance. Next slide, please. There you go, for the big star on the right. Next. Okay, so most of you are familiar with this, that there are 11 active jails in the New York City correction system. And we plan to replace those with a smaller, safer, fairer system that will have a housing total of about for 3,300 people, which requires 3,544 beds because you can't put people together if they're from different classifications. So that's the 2,244 difference. We have 4 borough-based sites: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. The Queens facility, it will be at the same location as the existing Queens facility. It will be a housing-based, the housing of the detainee will be based on their borough of residence, as well as it will incorporate a lot of program for continued focus on reentry and support services for them. Enhanced staff support and wellness spaces, including a gym, staff lounge, outdoor space, and quiet area. Reasoning, if people can just take a break and get away from things for a few minutes, maybe de-escalate, they'll be able to have a lot better interaction with the person in custody. Next, please. Next. Okay, so this is a very broad outline of the schedule. You can see there's a lot going on. We have proposals due this month for the Queens, Bronx, and Brooklyn dismantle projects that have been in market for the last several months. The Manhattan, sorry, I got an Amber Alert. Okay, so Manhattan we have out now with dismantle and swing space. That will be coming in the end of the month. And then following those, we have a well, we'll get into Queens, but the others will be having RFQs come up in later this year and for the development of the facilities. Next slide, please. Okay, in Queens, there's a lot going on. We have a parking garage that is taking shape on the west end of the existing DOT lot. It will be parking for about 600 cars. That's not for employees, that's for the general public. That project was processed, and we had We did a notice to proceed to that contractor, 100 Roberts Construction Group, back in March. And I'm happy to say that we received foundation permits, or rather excavation permits and supportive excavation permits. And PDC gave us a letter of approval last week, so that we should be able to get the foundation permit sometime this week. So excavation of the foundation for the parking garage will be starting this week. The Queens RFQ went out for the facility itself. We received several responses, and those are being reviewed now. The short list, I believe, maybe the end of next week or the following week. And then that will immediately go into the facility in-market process, where they'll come up with designs, and we work through it over a course of about 8 months before we select. They submit a proposal, and then we select, and the fun starts. Okay, the other big project going on here is the trunk water main on 82nd Avenue, which was demapped as part of this project. There is a 48-inch trunk water main that needs to be relocated so that we can put the building in that location. That trunk water main was designed by the DDC in-house infrastructure staff. That went out to, or will go out to bid on June 11th. And we're expecting those bids back in either July 6th or 7th. I'm not exactly sure on that. So the notice to proceed for the dismantle, which is coming in the proposals coming in this month, that will probably be the end of the year. So you probably won't see much happening outside until next spring. There'll be a lot of hazmat removals and things before they can start to demolish. The dismantle we expect to be finished in the second quarter of 2023. And then by that time, the facility should have been selected, and that design build team will be given their notice to proceed in the fourth quarter of 2022. So that's about 18 months from now. And that facility will be complete by the third quarter of 2027 to allow detainees to be taken off of Rikers. Next slide. Okay, so the facility itself will, again, with the big star on the right. Next slide. Okay, just as a refresher, you'll see Queens Boulevard along the bottom diagonal. The Queens Detention Facility is highlighted in blue. The garage to the north of that, garage and community space. There is we call it a buffer, but it's really pedestrian access for the Briarwood community over to the Queens Boulevard area and subway. So that will remain available as a improved pedestrian walkway, sitting area, etc. The design of that area will be taken up by the detention facility contractor, so they can look as a whole of the everything from Queens Boulevard over to the garage as a united theme, so to speak. Let's see, what else do we want to say here? The entries and exits to these buildings are located in blue small triangles. Garage community space on 126 near Union Turnpike. There's a secondary entrance for the lower level on 132nd near Union. The detention facility, though it's not designed, the ULURP has required the entry exit point for well, whatever they need to enter the garage to be occurring on 132nd, closer to the Union Turnpike entrance. And then for loading and the intake will all occur at the opposite end of the building, closer to Hoover Avenue, where that diamond or triangles are located at the end of the footbridge going from Briarwood. And that footbridge will remain, and the walkway from the footbridge up to the buffer area and across will be about the same distance as they're now going, if they're going to the E and the F, slightly longer if they're going to Borough Hall side of Queens Boulevard, but hopefully it'll be a nicer walkway. Next slide, please. Next, yeah. Okay, so this is just a couple of contextual views. We have the Queens Detention Center on the left. That curved structure at the bottom with the 3 stripes is the enclosing their Sally Port, where the buses are unloading with detainees and loading with detainees to take them back to Rikers. That building will be demolished, and the new facility will be taking up this space. You'll look on the right. It's from the parking lot on 82nd Avenue, which is where the new building will be constructed. So that building will no longer be there. Likely you will still see the corner of the criminal court at that time. Next slide. And then just a view from the Queens Boulevard looking northwest. The Queensboro Hall is off to your left behind all of those trees, or some housing and commercial on the right, closer to the subway on the right side. And then on the right slide is standing at Queens Boulevard in Hoover, looking up Hoover at residential towers on either side of the street. Next slide. And then, of course, on the opposite side along the Van Wyck, you see a view of the pedestrian bridge from 132nd Street looking towards the Briarwood community. I think they finished that part of the Van Wyck, so the equipment won't be there anymore. And then from the Briarwood community looking back towards the Queens House of Detention. Next. All right, so this is just sort of a bird's eye view or a very high drone. The Van Wyck Expressway runs along the rear of the complex. The Queensboro Hall is down and to the left. Criminal court is over to the right. So that it will really help to fill in the municipal complex in this part of Queens and really give a nice setting for people who want to sit and enjoy the weather. Behind Queensboro Hall is large park space. The garage was designed intending to help connect to that park space. And you'll see on the other side of Queens Boulevard, down towards the bottom of the slide, is the Kew Gardens residential area, single family homes. And then at the top is Grand Central Parkway on the left and the Briarwood community on the right. I believe that's the next slide. And then lastly, for my part, we have been doing a lot of public outreach that started in December of 2019, shortly after the ULURP was approved, with the Justice Implementation Task Force being briefed as to some of our strategy. We've met with the Queens Advisory Committee, the Justice Implement Task Force again in January. The design input from the community occurred in May. Even during the pandemic, we wanted to continue outreach because it is important to help form the design and the project as a whole. We met with several other groups, including the Women's Justice Advocates, which the Queens facility includes women. It has 240 or something beds for women and the adjacent medical facilities for that population. And so we met with people who had been previously incarcerated back in February and got a lot of great input that we're incorporating into our RFP. The community board 9 presentation to land use was back in March. Borough President's Committee was also in March, and the Queensboro Board was in May. And we will continue to have outreach as we go along and updates. We have a full construction community liaison. We'll be putting out almost weekly notices of what's occurring and what the local neighborhood can anticipate. Next. So now I'm going to turn it over to Beverly Pryor, who is the program manager for the AECOM Hill joint venture. And she is an expert in correctional facilities, correctional design for some 40 years. And we've been lucky enough to have her guidance on this. So take it away, Beverly.
So let's start by, I understand that you've had some of these presentations before, so I won't dwell too much on the standard process that we are engaging with. But the design guidelines are a very important set of documents that are prepared under the name of scoping documents for each of the design builders that will be putting a proposal together. And that set of documents includes design guidelines. It includes the architectural program, which defines the operational requirements for the sponsor agencies. It includes a basis of design, which gets into more detailed site and building criteria and engineering requirements. And then the most technical is the performance specifications and room data sheets. Next slide. For inputs to the design guidelines, we came in to manage this program with DDC in about 2 years ago, but prior to that had been a lot of visioning and a lot of engagement by what we call primary sources. So the Justice Implementation Task Force, the Van Allen Institute, and others really fed into the big vision. And so part of our job was to pull those things together into guidelines. There's been a lot of history that preceded DDC's and the program management consultants' involvement in this. And so we call that the primary sources, the big vision that included the Van Allen Institute, the Justice Implementation Task Force, and others in establishing what the goals and guidelines for the borough-based jails facilities should be. There are obviously sponsor agencies with the Department of Correction and the Correctional Health Services, as well as the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice that are impacting and guiding the facility planning. We've had involvement by city planning staff, especially the local urban designers and the urban design leads at city planning that have been very helpful in understanding the sites and topics. And then the stakeholders, which include city planning, the Public Design Commission staff, community, criminal justice advocates, and the design peer review, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. Next slide. Program-wide design goals have been kind of pulled into 4 different categories. Creating supportive environments, which is a lot about creating environments that support women and men in custody to foster a sense of well-being. The civic assets, the fact that these are important civic buildings, a strong desire for outstanding architecture, but also a strong desire for fitting within the fabric of the existing neighborhoods. Connected communities, which is a lot about connecting with the people in custody with services, families, and not only while they're in the facility, but as they exit the facility. And then enduring resources is about the quality of the facilities, that they are sustainable, resilient, that they will measure up to the 50-year life cycle that's planned for them. Next slide. So I'm going to share some of the inputs we've received from the many sources, and I will ask you all to notice the consistency of input. And I think this is really important because there have been so much commitment to receiving quality input, not only from community, but also from professionals and advocates, justice advocates. So for instance, in this community workshop in Queens, this strong desire for incorporating greenery in gardens, for having unobtrusive sidewalk security features, thinking about the context of nearby residents and wanting light that makes it feel, lighting at night that makes it feel safe and secure, but at the same time shielding the lighting so that it does not disrupt the neighbors. You'll hear recurringly a desire for a facility that's accessible and inviting, that's open, bright, and well lit. Next slide. The justice advocates really wanted to prioritize elements that ensure people are treated with decency and respect. So again, this feeling about being welcoming and inviting, natural light, cleanliness, non-institutional materials, and again, this strong desire for outdoor spaces that provide gardens and plants. As Rebecca noted, next slide, the Women's Justice Advocate Workshop, this is the facility that citywide is going to house women in custody. And so there was a special outreach to women justice advocates. And again, this desire for something that's welcoming, that the decor, the color, the lighting, all feels appropriate to people who have typically experienced trauma in their life. And how do we reduce the stress when you're already coming into a stressful situation? Providing comfortable chairs, providing child-friendly spaces, and providing women's support spaces. And I'll just note that there's a desire, part of the big concept is that the women's spaces are, that a woman entering into custody has a complete feeling of being in a women-only type facility. So the intake, the admissions process, going to the clinic, going to the housing, all of that is designed to minimize any interaction or any sense that men are in the facility as well. Let's go to the next slide, which the professional design peer review. So this was a really important, I know it mattered to the Planning Commission and it's mattered to the city in general that we have outside peer review, design peer review, drawn from specialists within New York City as well as national design and construction experts. Next slide. For the Queens facility peer review, we have some really outstanding reviewers. Samantha Josephat, representing design, Kendra Clark, representing women advocacy, Gudrun Molden from Europe, who was a designer of the Halden prison there that's very famous for its humane qualities. Nancy Prince, Chief of Landscape Architecture for New York City Parks and Recreation, and Tom Tynan, a construction expert. And our co-facilitators are Rosalie Ginevro and Nina Gladstone. Next slide. And then pulling together what are the key elements that we heard from the professionals. And you will see, again, a number of similar comments in terms of creating this normalized environment, including not just the housing areas, but the visiting areas where you're interacting with family and children. having the environment feel healthy for the individuals within and around the facility. In terms of public realm and urban design, a facility that's accessible, well-lit, aesthetically pleasing, lighting at the pedestrian scale. And in terms of the program and operations and the building, thinking about solar orientation and again, this sense of safety and a separate environment for the women. Next slide. So now we'll talk about this Queen's specific guidelines. And I'll note that the photographs that are being shown on the next slide, please, are ones that were shared at some of these community workshops. And these are the ones that were the higher rated images. We used images to help people articulate and define what they like and what they didn't like. And so these are images that reflect what people felt most comfortable with. So there is guidance along site and access, and with vehicular access, minimizing the impacts and maximizing safety on the street. For the pedestrian access and entrances, making them convenient, clear in terms of signage, and clear in terms of access to services and destinations within the facility. Next slide. In terms of urban design, a real understanding of how this facility, the new jail facility, fits within the context of the site. There's the courthouse on one end and there's the parking structure on the other end. And how is that space between developed and managed to provide the safety, but also to provide a relaxed and appropriate community environment. There was guidance around recognizing that most people will be coming to the facility from Queens Boulevard and thinking about that procession, and providing, again, this clear guidance to visitors and people coming to the facility. Next slide. This is the last of the design guidance summary slides, but this is the one on public realm and open space. And thinking, I've kind of hit some of this already, but the space between the garage and community center and the facility, and how those are developed to feel comfortable and engaging for casual pedestrians coming across the footbridge, across the Van Wyck, and people coming from the garage, thinking of all those access points and how to support that as an uplifting open space and public realm. Native plantings, street furnishings, and so on were part of the key guidance. So I'll turn it to Rebecca. Oops, I guess I do have one more slide on massing and building.
Nice try.
I know. That there be one more, next slide, please. Thank you. These show some of the thoughts around the character of the nighttime environment with lighting that might be subtle, but feels like it gives enough light for security. And but also thinking about the distinct scale and character of the project site and how these will all work together in a common development.
Okay, the next steps, they're the release of the Queens facility RFP in July, and then transition into the in-market period of the procurement process, where the DB team will create concepts and we'll work through them, check them against the basis of design, and make sure that they're really filling the program. We are currently advancing the RFP documents for the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Manhattan facilities. We're sharing ongoing program updates with you. and will continue stakeholder and community engagement and design input. And the next presentation scheduled with the City Planning Commission is the Bronx facility this coming August. And that succeeds our presentation. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to hear them.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Knight.
Just a question for you. This facility is going to house the healthcare portion of support for the detainees?
Each one of the facilities will provide healthcare to the people in custody. But this one will have separate facilities for the women and the men, or if they're shared, it'll be managed to provide that separation.
Right. And so, I know that there's been a lot of discourse, from the community about specific support for mental health. Has that come up as input related to design and program?
Absolutely. There are significant numbers of the housing program and the housing units that are dedicated. They're called therapeutic units, and they're dedicated and really a lot of the programming of that is led by the Correctional Health Services and their focus on mental and physical health.
Thank you.
I should also note that we have here with us Eugenia Di Girolamo, who is our lead, has been throughout our lead urban designer on the whole borough-based jails initiative. Commissioner Cirillo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the update and the presentation. Just focus for just a brief moment on sort of the public realm improvements or suggestions on this, which obviously are quite attractive in terms of the design. I was wondering what discussions or what guarantees there are with respect to the types of assets that are being envisioned, and who maintains the inventory for those things, so that as maintenance is required, and perhaps I'll kind of spin off on this with respect to the maintenance of the public spaces, is that a corrections department responsibility? Is it a DCAS responsibility? Is there going to be someone or some entity that is contracted with to do it? But I do know with respect to using what is non-traditional assets like streetlights and benches around the city often has a sort of in a way, understandable knee-jerk reaction against having so many different types of assets that they would need to ultimately replace. So I just wondered a little bit about how that's envisioned, and are there discussions taking place about how that will work, or is this just still very early in the process, but this is sort of visionary in style?
It's very early in the process, but we assume that the parking garage will be handled by the DOT, and the pedestrian walkthrough and the facility site will be handled by the Department of Correction.
Okay, and I guess someone will have to ensure that if, for example, the sort of lovely area lights that you showed in the rendering, that kind of inventory would be maintained by the agency itself then, in the event it's needed to be replaced, or in that respect?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And on the garage, with DOT managing the garage, I know for many years the city moved away from the agencies managing parking garages, and perhaps the vice chair will remember those days well. Is that something the agency DOT is embracing as a sort of management of the parking garages in this sort of new era?
Well, I think what they plan to do is have a concessionaire, and the concessionaire will be charged with maintenance.
Understood. Okay, so that is different than it was back in the day, but with DGS and DCAS's involvement in those things. But okay, so that's appreciate that response. Thank you.
Sure.
And that's a perfect segue to turn it over to Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. Could we go back to the schedule or the critical path graphic, please? Yeah. I just wanted to get, as it relates to Queens, the breakdown between design and build. How long is design going to take, and how long is actual construction going to take?
Now, why don't we move to the next slide? It's a little more clear. The RFP process is where they begin design. They get to it about 30%. And then they're going to continue designing probably till about halfway through the construction process, because they're designing the foundation early and then they move to the finishes towards the end. But the foundation will start being installed as soon as the design for that is finished. So you're going to see design from early 2022 until probably early 2024.
And then construction is how long? I know substantial completion by 2027, so it's going to take
about 3.5 to
3
4
years.
years.
4 years, yeah.
4 years.
Wow.
This is 1 million square feet and over $1.5 billion.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Commissioner Rompershot, I thought I had seen your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I had a problem with the hand function. A couple of real quick questions. With regards to the dismantling of the, I guess, the current detention facility behind the court, will you be closing off or removing all the parking along 132nd Street?
Not all of it. I think it'll be coordinated. Some days we may have to have it cordoned off, and other times they'll be able to park there. We'll be coordinating all that on site as we go along. Because I know judges park there and officers park there, so.
Right, and you know, with the now the construction on the garage, you know, where are they going to go? You know, so it's very. Yeah,
Well,
I know the area very well. So it's very
purposely set
difficult
up
with parking,
doing.
so.
I'm sorry. We
Okay.
perfectly set up doing the garage, so it will be finished before the facility comes online, so that everybody who was parking around the site will now be able to park in the garage.
Okay. Also, I was just curious. I know you said you presented to the community board and the borough president. What kind of feedback did you get from them in this last presentation that you did to them?
They were generally supportive, had questions about interaction with the neighborhood, but more specific than that, I would have to get back to you. I don't have offhand.
And one last question with regards to the massing of the detention facility. Has there been any changes from, say, when it was approved to now? Like, has anything changed with the height, the square footage, the program itself, the square footage is allowed for each part of the program? Has anything?
Well, I think we actually reduced it by a few thousand square feet as a cost-cutting measure. Parking.
Yeah, we reduced the amount of staff parking, not because we realized that not as much was needed. So that was a key part, but in terms of all the ULURP requirements, we're basically working within those, the floor area ratio, the heights, et cetera. No changes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you. At the last time we saw this, Commissioner Levin had suggested that this project would really benefit from a proper landscape master plan. And I'm wondering Is a landscape master plan included in the RFP, or how is that being addressed?
Well, we haven't called it out as such, but we want the facility contractor, design builder to consider the entire area, the entire top slot as their site.
So you would expect the design build team that you award the contract to include, excuse me, a landscape architect that come produce a master plan for the whole site?
Yes,
Good, great.
I am a landscape architect, so, you know,
You're gonna
the
do
more
it
the
yourself?
merrier.
You're gonna do it yourself, Rebecca?
No.
But there is.
Green side up.
Yeah, there is a specific focus around, you know, that Rebecca was sharing the overall site circulation, and there's that pedestrian passageway that's being proposed between the garage and the new facility. And there's special requirements in terms of thinking about how that, you know, the furniture and the planting and how that whole area works, as well as thinking about the procession from Queens Boulevard toward the facility.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ramprasad, did you have another question? I'm afraid you're muted, Commissioner Ramprasad.
He got his hand function to work, but now he's.
I'm sorry.
I don't do signs, sorry.
I'm sorry. My last question was with regards to the projected budget for the parking garage and the facility. What is it estimated to be?
Somewhere in the area of 1.5 to 1.7 billion.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Some of that is allowances that we'll only use if there are extenuating circumstances or overruns of something. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for this presentation, and we will look forward to our August discussion of the Bronx facility.
Great.
Okay, so moving on to our regular agenda, I will note that a quorum is present. So the first item on our agenda is a non-ULURP referral of a modification to a previously approved special permit and an amendment to a previously approved project plan in the Bronx Community District 9. Our presenter is Christine Camilleri.
Excuse me, I want to note that I am recused from this item, so I will be turning off my screen.
Thank you,
We'll note that
Commissioner.
on the agenda. Thank you. Christine?
Great, and thank you. And good afternoon. And next slide, please. And this is a private application by Camber Property Group LLC that is requesting 2 actions: a non-ULURP modification to the previously approved Stevenson Commons large-scale residential development. There is also an amendment to the previously approved Stevenson Commons city-aided limited profit housing project and plan, and that is pursuant to Article 2 of the New York State Private Housing Finance Law. The private project site is located at Block 3600, Lot 4 in Soundview in Bronx Community District 9. And the actions are requested to facilitate the proposed development, which consists of 6 new residential and mixed residential and community facility buildings, including approximately 735 dwelling units. And of that, 621 would be income restricted housing units, as well as 114 senior housing units. The development would also include approximately 670,000 square feet of new residential floor area, along with 32,000 square feet approximately of new community facility floor area and 466 off-street accessory parking spaces. Next slide, please. And here's an aerial view of the site to show its location relative to the rest of the Bronx. Next slide, please. And a slightly more zoomed in view on this slide, you can see that the site is slightly south of the Bruckner Expressway and about a mile northeast of Soundview Park, and about a half a mile north of Pugsley Park. There are some public transit options in the area, including the BX5 bus, which services Pelham Bay Park and Hunts Point, the BX36 bus, which provides connections between Soundview and Washington Heights, and that bus runs along Lafayette Avenue. There is also the BX39 bus that provides connections between Wakefield and Classen Point and runs along White Plains Road, and the BXM 8 bus, which runs along Bruckner Avenue and provides connections between Pelham Bay and Midtown. The Parkchester subway station, which services the 6 train, is located approximately 1 mile north of the project site and is accessible via the BX36. And the Soundview ferry terminal is located about a mile to the south of the project site. Next slide, please. And again, the project site consists of block 3600, lot 4, which is a 679,000 square foot super block that is bound by Lafayette Avenue, which is to the north, White Plains Road, which is to the east, Seward Avenue, which is to the south, and Theriot Avenue, which is to the west. And of the streets I just named, Theriot Avenue is a narrow street and the rest are wide streets. The NYCHA Monroe houses, which consist of 12 buildings ranging from 8 to 15 stories, are located northwest of the project site. And there is also a proposed 14-story residential building that is planned for location on the corner of White Plains Road and Lafayette Avenue, which is to the northeast, of the site. And that planned development will be facilitated by the 1965 Lafayette rezoning, which was adopted in 2017. You can also see on this image, there are a number of schools close to the project site, including the newly constructed Grand Concourse Academy Charter School and PS 182, which are both to the south. There is an existing development on the site today, which you can see is highlighted in yellow on this slide. That is an income restricted rental housing development, more specifically a Mitchell-Lama, that consists of 948 units within 3 24-story and 6 6-story buildings. And aside from residential uses on the site today, the existing Stevenson Commons development includes a 2-story community facility building that fronts on White Plains Road, which is the Stevenson Family Health Center, as well as commercial space that is located on the ground floors of the residential buildings that are at the corner of White Plains Road and Lafayette Avenue. There is surface parking also provided on the site today that is primarily concentrated on the western portion of the site, along with some underutilized recreational space. And the applicants state that both the parking and recreational spaces have been historically underutilized. And the applicant's intent is for the existing residential units, community facility space, and commercial spaces to remain should the proposed development be built. And their plan is to utilize the western portion of the site, which is outlined in red here for the proposed development. And there are a number of historic approvals that adopted for this site in the past. And Stevenson Commons, the existing development, completed construction in the mid-1970s pursuant to a large-scale residential development or LSRD approval, along with a project and plan approval and the underlying R6 zoning. And the LSRD approval included a site plan approval in 1973 that was granted by the Board of Estimates. And that included an authorization and 2 special permits that related to the commercial uses that are located on the corner of White Plains Road, and also permitted a group parking facility on this site. And prior to the 1973 approvals, there were several additional approvals granted in 1970s and also some approvals issued in 2003 for a tennis center that was never constructed, but the kind of full history of historic approvals are detailed in your briefing material. And the applicant acquired Stevenson Commons in 2017, and that transaction resulted in the preservation of Stevenson Commons as affordable rental housing. And around that time, the applicant also committed to having the development remain in the Mitchell-Lama housing program for an additional 40 years. Following the property acquisition, the applicant undertook a significant renovation of Stevenson Commons, which included full modernization of the elevator systems, full overhaul of mechanicals, along with energy efficiency retrofits, and a complete redesign and restoration of the property's central courtyard. Next slide, please. And so moving on to some more context, here is a land use and zoning map. The project site is shown in red, a red outline again on this slide. And you can see here that the site is completely within an R6 zoning district. There is an R5 zoning district immediately to the south that is mapped beginning south of Seward Avenue. The surrounding area to the southwest consists of low and medium density residential neighborhoods zoned R5 and also R6 south of Seward Avenue. And the buildings in these districts are largely detached and semi-detached 1 to 4 family homes. To the east, there is an R6 district as well as several R32 districts further west. Those R32 districts are not and the R4 are not visible on this map, but still worth noting. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some higher density residential developments to the northwest and northeast along Lafayette Avenue. The C41 district visible on this map includes Bruckner Commons, which includes a shopping center with a large grocery store. Next slide, please. And here are some photos for context that I will talk through. Starting on the upper left, we have a view of the project site facing southwest from White Plains Road and Seward Avenue. And the ground floor uses you see in this image are the commercial uses that were a significant driver of the approvals granted in 1973. The second photo on that top row in the middle is a view of the project site facing northwest from White Plains Road and Seward Avenue. And you can see in this image the Stevenson Family Health Center. Number 3 on the upper right-hand side is a view of the project site facing east from Thereto Avenue. Number 4 on the bottom left is a view of the project site facing southeast from across Lafayette Avenue. And number 5 is a view of Seward Avenue facing east from Thereto Avenue. And in this photo, just to orient you, the project site is on the left. Next slide, please. And just a few more photos on the upper left. Number 6 is a view of Thereto Avenue facing north from Seward Avenue. The project site is on the right in this image. Number 7 is on the middle of the top row is a view of the project site facing north from Seward Avenue. Number 8 is a view of the intersection of Seward Avenue and White Plains Road facing southeast from the project site. And the bottom left image is a view of the sidewalk along the west side of White Plains Road facing north from Seward Avenue. Again, you can see the Stevenson Family Health Center here. And lastly, number 10 on the bottom right is a view of Underhill Avenue facing south from the project site. Next slide, please. And now I will describe the proposed development as a whole, and then more specifically, talk through the proposed development building by building. This is a massing that shows the existing buildings in gray and the proposed buildings in color, approximate to the proposed uses. The proposed development consists of 6 new residential and mixed residential and community facility buildings. These are referred to as B1 through B6 on this image. So the development is proposed to include approximately 735 dwelling units. Of those, 621 would be income restricted income restricted dwelling units, and 114 of those are expected to be senior housing. The development is also planned to include approximately 670,000 square feet of new residential floor area, approximately 32,000 square feet of new community facility floor area, and 466 off-street accessory parking spaces. The project is designed to comply with R6 height factor regulations and would be constructed on the western and southern portions of the development site, replacing the existing Stevenson Common surface parking lots and some of that underutilized open space. The main entrances to the site are noted on this image, but just to verbally call those out, to the north, there would be a gated vehicular and pedestrian entrance at the intersection of Underhill Avenue and Lafayette Avenue. There would also be a similar entrance to the south near Seward Avenue and Underhill Avenue, and an additional entrance to the west off of Thereto Avenue, which would really be an entrance to the B4 parking lot. Residents of the existing Stevenson Commons development would still primarily access that development through an entrance that is existing, that's on the corner of White Plains Road and Lafayette Avenue. But there will be connections between the developments and all amenities constructed as part of the new development. And the site plan of the proposed development also includes a landscaping and open space plan and new tennis courts to be situated on the western portion of the project site. These are planned to be operated, or the tennis courts specifically are planned to be operated by the New York Junior Tennis League. The proposed development also includes fitness areas and open space for residents of the existing and new Stevenson Commons buildings. You can see those here, also to be provided on the western portion of the project site. Next slide, please. And now I will walk through each building and note that some of the information noted on the slides that follow, specifically related to the financing, is tentative and subject to change based on how those conversations progress. So I want to mention that. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so I will start with B1, which is located on the northwestern corner of the site. The portion of B1 that fronts on Lafayette Avenue would rise to 11 stories, and then it would decrease to 9 stories where the building fronts on Thereto Avenue. And this building would contain approximately 187 income restricted housing units. The plan currently is for that to potentially be a combination of units complying with the ELA and mix and match programs, but again, that's subject to change. Next slide, please. And moving on to B2, which is just east of B1, the portion of the building fronting on Lafayette Avenue would rise to a maximum height of 14 stories. Then the southern portion of the building would drop down to 11 stories. The building is slated to contain approximately 181 income restricted housing units and would contain approximately 7,600 square feet of community facility floor area. In addition to that, there would be enclosed structured parking provided as part of that building on the lower floors. Next slide, please. And B3 is situated towards the interior of the project site, and you can see is expected to be just south of B2. It is proposed to have a maximum height of 11 stories at its northwesternmost corner before dropping down to 8 stories to the northeast. And then the southern edge of the building would be approximately 9 stories tall. The building is proposed to contain approximately 195 income restricted rental units, along with 5,800 approximately square feet of community facility floor area at the ground level, and enclosed structured parking would also be provided on the lower floors of this building. Next slide, please. B5, which is just east of B4 and that you can see called out on this slide, would be 4 stories tall and contain approximately 16. This is a building that is expected to be senior housing. And actually, I think I just misspoke. It's expected to be between 4 and 6 stories. So 6 stories at that the corner that fronts on Theriot and Seward Avenue, and then 4 stories along Seward Avenue. Next slide, please. And B5, which is just east of B4, would be 4 stories tall and contain approximately 16 units that are intended to be income restricted home ownership units developed through HPD's Open Door program. Next slide, please. And moving on to the last building, B6 is situated just south of the existing Stevenson Commons complex. This building is to the east of B5. The westernmost portion of B6 is proposed to rise to 4 stories, while the easternmost portion of the building would drop down to 3 stories. B6 would contain approximately 42 income restricted home ownership units, also developed through HPD's Open Door program. Next slide, please. And just to provide some supplemental views of the proposed development, first, I have a few renderings. First is one of B4 looking east from Seward Avenue. This is looking at the senior housing building. Next slide, please. We have a view here of B4, again, this time looking west from Seward Avenue. Next slide, please. And a view from Leland Avenue, which is a private pedestrian path that runs north and south through the site. This is looking south. You can see B4, the senior housing building again in the background, and some of the athletic courts on the right. Next slide, please. And this is a view of Underhill Avenue looking north through the proposed development. The portion of Underhill Avenue that is shown here is a private road that is open to both cars and pedestrians and runs north and south through the center of the lot between the existing and proposed developments. Next slide, please. And this is another view of Leland, the pedestrian path looking north through the site. Next slide, please. And now to speak to the requested actions. This is an application for a non-ULURP modification of a large-scale residential development, and the applicants are seeking to modify the site plan to facilitate the proposed development. And as I alluded to earlier in the presentation, the approved Stevenson Commons large-scale residential development included 1 authorization and 2 special permits. These are first an authorization pursuant to zoning resolution section 7822 to allow accessory commercial uses, and that pertained to the existing commercial uses on the corner of White Plains Road and Lafayette Avenue. Number 2, a special permit pursuant to zoning resolution section 7842 to permit a waiver of the accessory commercial parking requirement. And 3rd, a special permit pursuant to zoning resolution section 74-53 to permit an accessory group parking facility with more than 150 spaces. The newly proposed development would continue to meet the findings of these sections of the zoning resolution, and a full discussion of the findings are included in your briefing package. The applicant also requests a project plan amendment, and this is an action that is required by state law due to the existing Mitchell-Lama that is located on the site today and will remain. And the applicants note that the proposed development does not impact the existing Stevenson Commons buildings that were approved pursuant to the project plan. And the portion of the project site that would be developed is underutilized, in poor condition, and presents some public safety concerns. The applicants also state that the proposed development will provide enhanced amenities to existing residents, including access to new landscaped, open and recreational space. Next slide, please. And a few notes on environmental review. An EIS has been conducted with the Department of City Planning acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as lead agency. The notice of completion for the draft EIS was issued earlier today. The DEIS does identify significant adverse impacts for traffic as well as transit, as well as construction, traffic, and noise. Possible mitigation measures are outlined in the draft environmental impact statement and will be explored further between the draft EIS and final EIS. Next slide, please. And I will close my presentation with this image and pause for questions.
Thank you, Christine, for walking us so clearly through a complex development proposal. Questions from the Commission? Commissioner Levin.
Well, yes, following up on the chair's remarks, I find I don't have any detailed questions because that was a very nicely thorough presentation and a project that seems to make a lot of sense. I'm wondering, just as a follow-up matter, if you could send us copies of the 73 approvals of the LSRD and the whatever the other thing is that we're amending. I realize they are 1973, so they're not yet available on the website.
Happy to follow up and provide that. Yes, they are
Okay.
not quite digitized.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if they could be and shipped to us,
Absolutely.
that would help us understand what it is that we're being asked to change.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. Ms. Camilleri, the document indicates 466 parking spaces, which I had assumed much of which would be certainly off street and below, but on the rendering, there seems to be spaces delineated, especially around buildings 4 and 5 and 6 that appear to be above ground. So I just wanted some clarification on that. The 466 spaces, where are they going to be located, and how many are below ground or above ground or enclosed, etc.?
Sure, thank you for the question. And so it is a combination of structured parking that will be provided in buildings and also some surface parking. And so what we understand is there would be 1 floor of structured parking in building 1, 3 floors of structured parking in B2, two floors of structured parking in B3, and then specific, some additional surface parking, as you mentioned, kind of throughout the development. In total, that would the total number would be 466. And as far as a kind of specific breakdown, kind of per building, if that's useful, we can follow up with that information. But that is kind of the layout of the parking that's being provided.
And the structured parking that you referenced, would that be below ground? The 2 and 3 floors, or would that be above ground but within the building? How would that work?
I believe that is above ground in the building itself, but we'll confirm that when this comes back. But my understanding is structured above ground.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you, Christine. You showed us a rendering of the senior housing and the B4 building, I think, but I don't recall seeing renderings of other new buildings. Are they available, or will they be available?
Yeah, we at this time only have shared the renderings that are available, but I think we'll plan to ask the team to share additional renderings. The reason for the kind of the lag is related to the financing for the buildings, the senior housing and home ownership buildings being a bit further along. And so the resources so far have been dedicated to developing renderings for those buildings, since the rental buildings have some details that may affect the renderings. The B1 through B3 buildings that are rental. And so we will make note to make sure to share those as they become available for sure.
Well, you might pass along the thought that if the other buildings are not dissimilar to the senior housing and the B4, they'll be doing just fine.
Thank you.
Thanks for the heads up on that one, Commissioner. Other questions? Okay, not seeing any, then we will refer this project to the community board for 60 days.
Thank you.
The second item on our agenda is a certification of a special permit and referral of authorizations in Queens Community District 1. Our presenter is Sarit Plotkin.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Next slide, please. This is a private application by WF Industrial 4 LLC for a waterfront special permit to waive bulk and setback requirements and 2 waterfront authorizations to modify requirements of a public access area to facilitate the development of Wildflower Studios, a 7-story, 135-foot tall media production facility totaling 495,000 square feet in Community Board 1, Queens. The proposed development will contain 11 sound stages and accessory facilities, and there will be 34,800 square feet of publicly accessible open areas. Next slide, please. The high-level goals of the project are to bring well-paying jobs to the local community, grow media and entertainment sectors in Queens and New York City, provide public open space in a neighborhood with few outdoor amenities today, and ecologically restore a tidal wetland. Next slide, please. The project area is located in the northeastern portion of Astoria Community Board 1, approximately 1 mile west of LaGuardia Airport within the Astoria Steinway IBZ. It is also about 1 mile south of Rikers Island. Next slide, please. The site is within an M31 zone bounded by Leicester Creek, also known as Steinway Creek to the west, Bowery Bay to the north and east, and Berrien Boulevard and 19th Avenue to the south. The area south and east of the project area is occupied by an M11 district that extends east to encompass LaGuardia Airport and industrial and manufacturing uses. The site and the area north and west of it is zoned M31 and occupied by low-scale, high lot coverage, heavy manufacturing uses. The areas south of 20th Avenue are zoned with low-density R4 and R5 contextual districts. Retail uses are concentrated along 37th Street south of the project area. Next slide, please. Prevailing built form north and west of the project area is 1 to 2 story industrial and manufacturing uses. There are large, heavy manufacturing uses along the waterfront, including the Astoria Energy Power Plant, DEP's Bowery Bay Wastewater Treatment Plant, and DSNY's forthcoming Queens Sanitation Garage, a combination site selection and acquisition that was approved by City Council in December 2020 and will be located on the other side of Leicester Creek with access via 19th Avenue. 1 block south, there is a 1-story shopping plaza containing a supermarket, gym, and dollar store on the west side of 37th Street and local brewery on the east side. There is recreation space on either side of the shopping plaza, including Woodtree Playground to the east and privately owned soccer and baseball fields to the west. Residential areas south of 20th Avenue are generally improved with 2 to 4-story multifamily buildings. The Q101 and Q100 buses serve the project area with service along 20th Avenue to East Midtown and Queens Plaza respectively. The project area is located approximately 1 mile north of the nearest subway station, the Ditmars station, with service on the N and W lines. Next slide, please. The project area and development site outlined in red are coterminous and include a single 11-acre zoning lot comprised of the applicant-owned Lot 10, the construction site, and non-applicant-owned Lot 1, occupied by the Steinway Piano Factory. The construction site consists of 5 acres of unimproved land, although initial foundation work has begun for the preparation of the site for an as-of-right development scenario, including a last-mile facility. The construction site has 435 feet of frontage on 19th Avenue and 475 feet of frontage on the creek. The Steinway Piano Factory consists of 6 acres and is improved with buildings ranging from 1 to 5 stories. The project area is zoned M31, which permits 2 FAR of commercial or manufacturing floor area. Next slide, please. Here is a zoomed in view of the construction site with the 475-foot frontage along the creek's irregularly shaped natural shoreline. The project area is within the flood zone AE, subject to a 1% annual chance of flooding, which necessitates flood resilient construction. In addition, the portion of the site below 10 feet above sea level is within DEC's tidal wetlands jurisdiction, in which impervious coverage cannot exceed 20%. Next slide, please. Here you can see the unimproved construction site looking west from within the site. Next slide, please. Here you can see the frontage on 19th Avenue on the top left, the street end at 19th Avenue, and the parking lot that serves as the entrance to DSNY's driveway easement on the top right, and a view of the street end at 19th Avenue where it meets the development site in the bottom left. Next slide, please. Here you can see images of the existing natural shoreline along the creek from 19th Avenue from within the development site. Next slide, please. The proposed development is a 7-story, 495,000 square foot media production facility with approximately 34,800 square feet of landscape publicly accessible open space. Development will contain 11 sound stages in a vertical studio village, and it will rise to 135 feet without setbacks. The development will also facilitate approximately 1,100 jobs. Next slide, please. As you can see in this image, the building will assume a loft-like building envelope, rising to 135 feet without setbacks, allowing it to accommodate the configuration of sound stages, ample loading, and freight elevators needed in a studio village. The facade will be made of precast concrete, a material that best supports acoustics critical to sound stages, and there will be 150,000 square feet of solar on the roof to support some of the building's functions. Next slide, please. Film studios on this scale are typically housed on big open lots, but given New York City's density, a vertical arrangement would be constructed instead. In this section, you can see the vertical studio village concept. The building will include 2 levels of 60-foot tall sound stages that, due to flood risk, would be elevated above a ground floor that will house 26 off-street loading berths and 310 accessory parking spaces. 6 freight elevators within the building core would connect each soundstage to loading areas, which will allow for the movement of goods and equipment within the building. The building core will also include the lobby and reception areas and 7 stories of programmatic support space, such as office, wardrobe, props, and storage, as well as communal areas such as the commissary and gym. Sound stages have a minimum dimension of 120 feet by 150 feet with a height of 60 feet, requiring a large floor plate to accommodate multiple sound stages. Next slide, please. The 19th Avenue frontage visible here will be the main entry point. 19th Avenue will house a public access area or PAA that includes bioswales and seating, as well as the entry point to the waterfront public access area or WPAA, highlighted with a green arrow. Sufficient parking and loading is critical to the studio village concept. 19th Avenue will include 2 curb cuts, including a 60-foot curb cut visible here and a 30-foot wide curb cut further east that leads to an elevated driveway with a ramp to the first level of sound stages. In addition, to ensure easy access to the development for staff and visitors alike taking public transit, a shuttle bus would run during rush hour to and from the Ditmars Boulevard NW station with drop-off at the 19th Avenue entrance. The drop-off would also be used for taxi and rideshare services. Next slide, please. Public access areas will include approximately 30,600 square feet of waterfront public access area, or WPAA, along Leicester Creek, and a 4,200 square foot public access area, or PAA, along 19th Avenue, and will include a mix of walkways, seating, and planted areas. Along the waterfront, the WPAA will have a depth of between 50 to 70 feet from the shoreline and a clear path between 8 to 12 feet wide that will be constructed with a mix of wood decking, metal grading, and crushed gravel. Given that approximately 26,000 square feet of the WPAA will fall within the DEC tidal wetlands jurisdiction, only limited impervious coverage is permitted, necessitating an elevated walkway comprised of permeable metal grading that allows rain and sunlight to pass through. Here you can see an image of the entry to the waterfront from 19th Avenue, which will include movable seating, bike racks, and educational signage featuring native plants and wildlife. Next slide, please. Here you can see another image of the WPAA, featuring the wood benches, native flora and fauna, movable seating, and the metal graded path. The WPAA will also provide an overlook, looking out over Leicester Creek and providing views northeast towards the East River. Several plants within the WPAA will provide phytoremediation, capturing and cleaning stormwater before it passes through to the city sewer system and Leicester Creek to help remediate the creek. Next slide, please. The proposed development would contain 34,800 square feet of publicly accessible areas, which is equivalent to 15.2% of the construction site's lot area and 7.1% of the development site's lot area. As mentioned before, the public access areas include a 30,600 square foot WPAA along Leicester Creek and a 4,200 square foot PAA fronting 19th Avenue. Next slide, please. Here you can see the different elements of the shore public walkway and supplemental public access areas along the creek, including the planting, seating, and overlook along the creek. The PAA would include an ADA accessible walkway with a minimum width of 12 feet and a minimum clear width of 8 feet. It would contain 410 linear feet of seating, including movable seating and fixed chairs, backed benches, and backless benches, as well as 29 tables. The WPAA would include 19,415 square feet of planted area. Next slide, please. The 19th Avenue PAA would consist of a paved pathway, landscaping, and seating areas that would contain 106 linear feet of seating, 9 tables, and 1,900 square feet of planted areas, including 5 trees and bioswale areas. Next slide, please. This rendering shows more clearly the various elements of the proposed WPAA, including the elevated pathway, which will include a mix of wood decking and metal grading through the restored wetlands. The entire WPAA area would be open to the public except during nighttime closings permitted under Zoning Resolution Section 6271. The development site is located in the coastal zone designated by New York State and the city and is subject to the coastal zone management policies of the city, including the Waterfront Revitalization Program, or WRP. The proposed development would be consistent with the public policies applicable to the development site pursuant to the WRP. Next slide, please. The applicant proposes the following actions to facilitate the proposed development: a bulk modification special permit pursuant to Zoning Resolution 62837A to modify setback, building height, maximum length of walls facing the shoreline, and ground floor streetscape requirements; an authorization pursuant to Zoning Resolution Section 62822A for modification of waterfront public access areas and supplemental public access area requirements; and an authorization pursuant to Zoning Resolution Section 62822B for modification of design requirements of a waterfront public access area and supplemental public access area. Next slide, please. Special Permit 62837A for bulk and parking modifications on waterfront blocks permits the Commission to modify applicable yard, lot coverage, height and setback, and distance between building regulations for development on waterfront blocks pursuant that the modifications will not adversely affect access to light and air on surrounding waterfront public access areas, streets, and properties. The special permit findings include that the proposed development will result in a better site plan and a better relationship between the zoning lot and adjacent streets, surrounding neighborhood, adjacent open areas, and shoreline than would be possible through strict adherence to the regulations, or are necessary to protect unique natural features such as rock outcroppings, significant grade changes or wetlands, or to accommodate existing buildings or other structures. Next slide, please. The special permit to waive bulk and setback requirements for waterfront blocks pursuant to zoning resolution section 62837A would facilitate a loft-like building envelope that would better match the built context of the surrounding industrial area than the underlying regulations and would allow for the site to accommodate a vertical studio village. The special permit would allow the building to rise to a height of 135 feet with no setbacks by waiving the base height of 60 feet and maximum height of 110 feet in M31 districts. It would increase the maximum length of walls facing the shoreline from 100 feet to 422.8 feet and 123.88 feet. And it would waive the requirements that 50% of ground floor frontage contain floor area to allow parking and loading. On this site plan, you can see the entrance to the main lobby adjacent to the entrance to the WPAA with a red arrow, as well as a smaller lobby further east, and the two curb cuts, the 60-foot curb cut to the west and 30-foot curb cut to the east that leads to the elevated driveway. As mentioned earlier, the ground floor would contain 26 off-street loading berths and 310 accessory parking spaces. Next slide, please. The first waiver is for height and setback. The applicant is requesting to waive the 30-foot minimum setback requirement for a commercial development from a shore public walkway and the 60-foot maximum base height requirement in M31 districts. The areas where relief is being sought are represented in pink. These modifications would allow the new building's walls facing the WPAA to rise without setback to their maximum height of 135 feet within 30 feet of the shore public walkway. These modifications would accommodate minimum soundstage dimensions of 120 feet by 150 feet and create a more loft-like envelope that relates to the surrounding context. Next slide, please. The second waiver relates to building height. The applicant is requesting to increase permitted maximum height from 110 feet permitted for waterfront zoning lots in M31 districts to 135 feet. This modification would allow two levels of sound stages which have a minimum height requirement of 60 feet and facilitate a more resilient design by raising the sound stages above the design flood elevation. Next slide, please. The next waiver relates to the maximum length of walls facing the shoreline. The applicant is requesting to waive the 100-foot maximum wall length facing a shoreline to increase it to 422.8 feet facing the Leicester Creek shoreline to the development site's west and 123.88 feet facing Leicester Creek shoreline to the development site south. This would allow the development to accommodate the minimum dimensions of sound stages, which include 120 by 150 feet. Next slide, please. The next waiver relates to the ground floor streetscape. The applicant is requesting to waive the requirement that 50% of ground floor street frontage and/or WPA frontage contain floor area. The ground floor will contain 157,000 square feet of wet flood-proof parking and loading space that will not generate floor area. Raising the sound stages above the accessory ground floor parking and loading areas allows them to be elevated above the design flood elevation and facilitate flood-resistant construction in accordance with Appendix G of the building code. Areas with floor area, which include lobby space, are represented by the red dotted lines. Next slide, please. The second action is an authorization pursuant to section 62822A of the zoning resolution to modify waterfront public access area and visual corridor requirements. Zoning resolution 62822A2 permits modification of requirements for location, area, and minimum dimensions of waterfront public access areas and visual corridors. In the event that the commission determines that there is no feasible way to provide equal alternative waterfront public access areas either on the zoning lot or off-site, on an adjoining public property, or to provide equal alternative visual corridors, the commission may authorize a reduction in minimum dimensions or area or may waive such requirements, provided that such development would be impracticable physically or programmatically due to site planning constraints such as the presence of existing buildings or other structures or elements having environmental, historic, or aesthetic value to the public, and that the reduction or waiver of requirements is the minimum necessary. Next slide, please. Pursuant to zoning resolution 62-822A, the applicant is requesting to waive the requirement that the WPAA provide open space equivalent to 15% of the waterfront zoning lots area. The WPAA will comprise 7% of the zoning lot, which is equivalent to 15% of the construction site's area. The authorization would also reduce the required average width of the supplemental public access area from 25 feet to 22 feet. Because the development site's 475-foot full shoreline is located on the construction site, the as-of-right waterfront access requirements would occupy a significant amount, approximately 32% of the floor plate for the proposed development, leaving only approximately 155,000 square feet of buildable lot area on the construction site and impairing the desired configuration based on the minimum dimensions for sound stages. To provide public access areas equivalent to 15% of the construction site, the applicant is proposing a 30,600 square foot waterfront public access area that would cover the full shoreline of the combined zoning lot and a 4,200 square foot public access area along 19th Avenue. Next slide, please. The third action is an authorization pursuant to zoning resolution section 62-822B to modify requirements within waterfront public access areas relating to design requirements per zoning resolution 6260. In order to grant such authorization, the commission shall find that the modifications are necessary to accommodate modifications pursuant to paragraph A, or would result in a design of waterfront public access areas that is functionally equivalent or superior to the design prescribed by strict adherence to the applicable provisions. Next slide, please. To adhere to the provisions of the DEC tidal wetlands jurisdiction intended to restore ecological habitats, natural shorelines, and native plantings, while still providing appropriate access for the public to enjoy Leicester Creek, the applicant seeks an authorization pursuant to zoning resolution section 62-822B to modify the following design requirements within the WPAA. Modify slope, height, and paving material requirements to permit a permeable elevated walkway. Waive the lawn requirement to enable plantings that facilitate habitat restoration, and make additional modifications to allow more seating, ensure pedestrians stay on the designated path, and accommodate the wetlands jurisdiction. Next slide, please. In summary, this project will include a series of land use actions to facilitate the development of a 495,000 square foot media production facility with 11 sound stages, 34,800 square feet of publicly accessible open areas, and contribute to the growth of 1,100 jobs. The actions will allow the development to better match the surrounding built form, better adapt to the unique needs and constraints of a vertical studio village, facilitate resilient and ecologically restorative design, and provide waterfront access and green space for nearby residents. That concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarit, and thank you to the entire team that worked on this. It was the combination of an interesting, challenging site and a relatively unique program. Questions? Commissioner Levin.
Well, yes, actually, the question I have is a detail aside from the facility itself, which I realize is tremendously complicated and quite a striking piece of work. But I remember when we did the sanitation garage approval on the other side of the creek, and this is noted in the briefing sheet, the community board was particularly enthusiastic, and I think many of the some of the commissioners shared this view, that the sanitation department ought to apply some attention to the public waterfront access area on the other side of the creek. But that there wasn't any funding to do it. They would save the space, but couldn't commit to doing it as part of building the garage. I'm wondering if there's now any opportunity to coordinate for this applicant to coordinate with sanitation to give some good attention to restoration of the other side of the creek as well. I realize it's not technically required, but it would certainly enhance the waterfront all around this bottom end of the creek.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. So you are correct that it was a high priority for the community at the point of the sanitation garage being certified to include a public access component. that currently is not funded yet, but in terms of opportunities for coordination, that is something that has been strongly voiced by the community board in the various public meetings leading up to public review and continues to be a priority for them. At this point, there are no intended or planned connections between the two sites, but there is a street end at 19th Avenue that the community board likely will include in their recommendations, as has been a part of their conversations, recent conversations, to take a closer look at how that 19th Avenue street end, which really could serve as a link between the two development sites, could be developed into public open space and provide that nexus.
Good. Yeah, no, it really seems like an opportunity that shouldn't be passed up, and we should really do everything we can to try and make something work there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Marin.
Good afternoon, and thank you. So Commissioner Levin picked up on one of the points that I wanted to stress, and thank you for that, because that was something that the community did mention and was very adamant about when that presentation was made to us. And now I also wanted to stress the Shore Public Walkway now on the Wildflower Studios. And one of my questions is, what would be the hours of operations for now, if at all, for that walkway?
So I don't have the exact hours of operation. The applicants can speak more to that when they present at the public hearing, but they are only intending to close during a short nighttime closing. So they can speak more to the exact hours for that.
Great, because that leads me into the security issue. And, the building looks great. I understand it's all concrete. And I got to tell you something, Commissioner Levin applauded the efforts. I want to say that I saw a TIE fighter and either Godzilla or a King Kong in there. So these are ambitious. It's great for the city of New York to see that the ambition is there to create this level of Hollywood type productions. And I see that the facades are blank and necessary as a result, and there is some color and color blocking to the facade, which is quite interesting. Are there any kind of lighting mechanisms that would light that wall? Because across the creek, looking over at night, they would look really, really nice. Is there anything that also would help with security? So is there any plans for outdoor lighting for the building? If they can elaborate on that when they come back, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, I will say that given security, there obviously is an intended, heavy security presence, as this will be a large film production studio. And so that is definitely part of the intended program. And, you did see in one of the renderings I shared kind of the lighting of the Shore Public Walkway itself. And we can ask the applicants to speak more to the lighting of the building and how they are intending to program that.
Yeah, I did see that, so I didn't want to understate that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It is really well lit. It's very nice. You can see the intention of the ground and the light fixtures. You can see them in the renderings as well. So the security is a real issue for me. And so if they can really touch on that, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yeah, thank you. Both Commissioner Levin and Commissioner Marin raised the items or issues that I also had with this project. But one other question I had is with regards to the shuttle bus, can they clarify a little bit further about it? Are they the ones that will be doing this, and for what time frame is this for? Like during hours of operation of the studio?
So the shuttle bus is intended for weekday rush hour service, as far as I understand it, and exact, final details are still to be determined. And are going to be developed in coordination with the Department of Transportation and New York City Transit. And this is, the shuttle bus is something that will be, there will be a restrictive declaration recorded against the development site as a result of environmental review, in terms of kind of preventing adverse impacts on transportation here. But that's something that, the applicants can likely speak to in greater detail if they have kind of a more fleshed out vision, but that's my understanding right now.
And the other two questions I had were, what kind of improvements were they gonna make to 19th Avenue, which I know you just alluded to, they'll probably elaborate a little further. And the 1,100 jobs, are those permanent jobs, or is that considered also with the construction component of this project?
So 1,100 permanent jobs are anticipated, and then in addition, 600 construction jobs are anticipated. And then on 19th Avenue, the applicants can speak more to this, but they are anticipating to kind of replace a Jersey barrier that's currently at the street end of 19th Avenue as well.
Right, and one last thing, the total height of the building would be at 150 feet, correct?
So it's
for the flood
150
zone?
feet with the bulkhead. It's 135 feet per the zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. I know we're at certification, but I'd be interested certainly by the time we get to the public hearing as to whether or not there's any workforce development opportunities envisioned by the sponsors of the project. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I can give you just a high level overview right now, which is that, you know, workforce development is obviously integral to this project and has been a priority for the community throughout kind of conversations leading up to this point. The applicants are intending to commit to local hiring as well as MWBE and, you know, hiring of kind of local firms to support the development of the project. They also are starting to think about what kind of more workforce programming could look like, particularly given the large concentration of NYCHA developments in Community Board 1 Queens, one of the largest concentrations of public housing in the country. Actually, over 20,000 NYCHA residents live in Community Board 1. So this is being taken very seriously, and they can definitely speak to this in greater detail as to exactly kind of how they're envisioning kind of reaching the local community through workforce programming.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just following up on that topic of the facade. I mean, it's always difficult with a sort of big box building that doesn't require fenestration to sort of stop it just looking like a bunker. And it does look as though they've done a good job on that. And I'd be interested to know when they come back, if they could give us a little bit more detail on exactly what that facade design is. I'd just be curious to see how they're doing that. The other thing is, I think it's important that the hours of access to the waterfront walkway not be just at the discretion of the owner. I mean, it should be public access that's guaranteed, that's not simply at their discretion. So I hope that'll be something that will work out. I mean, it's not a POPS, is it? It's a public access waterfront, and there are regulations governing that, are there not?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is something that's kind of that they will be able to speak to when they come.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the issue of the sanitation site, I remember when they made that presentation, you know, Catherine Garcia was part of that presentation team. And when they said, oh, well, you know, due to budget constraints, they were going to have to eliminate the landscaping, we said, well, you know, you don't have to do the full-blown design that your landscape architect came up with. You could do a minimal treatment. And they committed to that. So as and when Catherine Garcia becomes mayor, you know, we will go back and revisit that that topic.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
we
you.
know who's got at least one of your top 5 slots, Commissioner. And Commissioner Ramprashad, did you want to come back again?
No, I didn't realize my hand was still up. Sorry.
No worries. Okay, not seeing any more questions, then this application is certified. Thank you, Sarit.
Thank you.
All right. The third item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map amendment in Queens Community District 14. Our presenter is Joy Razor.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a private application by 79 Arvern Development LLC for a zoning map amendment from an M11 district to an M12 district. We can go to the next slide. And this zoning map amendment will facilitate a new 6-story self-storage facility located in the Arvern neighborhood of the Rockaways in Queens Community District 14. Next slide. As you can see from this map, the proposed project area is located on the Rockaway Peninsula within close proximity of the A train, only a half-mile away from the Beach 67th Street station. The project area is also located approximately 3 miles from downtown Far Rockaway. Next slide. The project area is identified in black on this map, and is located entirely within the 1% annual chance floodplain. Next slide. During Hurricane Sandy, the area was inundated with an average of 3 to 6 feet, with some lots in the area seeing up to 18 feet of flooding. And you can see that the project area is outlined there in red, in black, sorry. Next slide. The project area is located within an M11 zoning district that has remained unchanged since 1961. The Arvern Urban Renewal Area, established in 1968, is located south of Beach Channel Drive and extends from Beach 32nd Street to Beach 84th Street to encourage new housing development. Surrounding areas were rezoned as part of the 2008 Rockaway neighborhood rezoning, which sought to reflect established development patterns in lower density residential areas and to provide for moderate growth opportunities at select locations along major commercial corridors and near transit. In December 2017, the City Council adopted the self-storage text amendment, which established a required CPC special permit to develop new self-storage facilities in designated M1 zoning districts. However, the proposed rezoning area is not within a designated M district in accordance with Appendix J and does not require a special permit. Next slide. The proposed project area, indicated in black, is bounded by Barbados Basin to the north, private property to the east, Beach Channel Drive to the south, and Brandreth Creek to the west. The development site is shown in red and is improved with an existing 34,500 square foot building that contains manufacturing and warehouse space. A portion of the lot also contains vacant land. The remaining lots within the rezoning area are partial lots that contain the footprint of the elevated A-train and Rockaway Freeway, as well as Brandreth Creek. The surrounding area is characterized by a mix of industrial, community facility, and commercial uses, which include auto and tire repair shops, vacant land, and small churches. Residential uses can be found east of Beach 75th Street, approximately 400 feet away, as well as south of Rockaway Freeway, approximately 800 feet away from the project area. And these include single, two-family, and multifamily buildings ranging from 1 to 3 stories in height. Burnham Nature Preserve, located across Barbados Basin, is part of the 64,000 acre Gateway National Recreation Area. Next slide. Here are some photos of existing conditions on site. These photos show the southern side of the existing low-scale industrial building within the development site, facing northeast, southeast, and north across Beach Channel Drive. The second picture in the upper right clearly shows the elevated A-train subway tracks on the right and the manufacturing building on the left, which currently houses 7 light manufacturing tenants who provide a wide range of services. Next slide. Photos 4, 5, and 6 show the entrance into the development site from Beach Channel Drive. In the top right photo, you can see the existing industrial building again on the left, and the lower left photo provides a better view of the front of the existing building. Next slide, please. These photos provide a closer view of the existing building, including the entrance and approximately 10 unmarked parking spaces on site, facing northwest, southwest, and south. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of the site plan showing the proposed development, and the perspective has shifted, so north is now to the right. The proposed development would consist of 2 buildings. The applicant proposes no changes to the existing single-story, 34,500 square foot building, Building A, and the 7 tenants currently occupying the space would remain. A new 6-story, approximately 146,000 square foot self-storage building, Building B, would be constructed east of Building A on the same site. Building B would contain approximately 960 storage units and would be elevated 15.5 feet, raising it above the base flood elevation of 10 feet. The development would also provide 34 total parking spaces and 5 loading berths. Due to the development locations within the 1% annual chance floodplain, the ground floor entrance would also be dry flood proofed in accordance with Appendix G of the building code. Permeable pavers would also be provided within the drive aisle in front of Building A to reduce ponding and flooding. Next slide. The development would be accessed from Beach Channel Drive using an existing curb cut at Beach 79th Street. The proposed self-storage building would contain units ranging in size from 5 by 5 feet to 10 by 25 feet. The applicant anticipates that approximately 25% of the units would be used by local contractors or artists, and the rest would be used by local residents. Building B would also be set back more than 50 feet from the tidal wetlands in compliance with DEP regulations. Next slide. On the first floor of Building B, which is the new self-storage building, 24,090 square feet would be used for self-storage space, and the main office would also be located here. The first floor would be accessible via elevators from the ground floor parking level. The upper floors would each contain the same amount of self-storage space, providing a total of 960 units varying in size. Next slide. This diagram shows a breakdown of the existing 34,500 square feet of light manufacturing uses and tenanted space in Building A. As mentioned, the current 7 tenants would remain in Building A, and the building would remain unchanged. The tenants provide a wide range of manufacturing uses, from carpet fabrication to conveyor belt manufacturing. Next slide. Here's a rendering of the proposed self-storage facility to get a better sense of the overall bulk. The existing manufacturing building, Building A, can be seen to the west, and you can also see how cars will enter off of Beach Channel Drive into the site. Next slide. When the self-storage text amendment was adopted in 2017, the EIS only identified one self-storage facility in the Rockaways, and the number of facilities has not grown substantially since then. Today, there's still only one existing facility. 10602 Rockaway Beach Boulevard, located about 1 mile from the project area, was certified on April 5th and would facilitate the second self-storage facility on the peninsula. Because the peninsula is almost entirely located within the 1% annual chance floodplain, Rockaway residents often do not have access to cellar space, since new homes are constructed in accordance with Appendix G of the Building Code, which prohibits subgrade space. Additionally, many homes have been elevated or retrofitted to be flood resilient, which often eliminates previously usable storage space. The proposed development would provide approximately 146,000 square feet of self-storage space, serving more than 700 households for residents to store sensitive and important items, as well as construction materials for those who are still in the process of rebuilding their homes. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing a zoning map amendment from an M11 to an M12 zoning district. While self-storage use is permitted within both districts, the current M11 zoning district allows for a maximum commercial and manufacturing FAR of 1.0, while the proposed M12 would permit an FAR of up to 2.0. According to the applicant, the proposed M12 zoning district would be complementary within the surrounding M11 district and would incentivize development on lots currently used as outdoor construction storage areas. The applicant also believes that increased bulk is appropriate here due to the immediately surrounding industrial uses and the project area's location along Beach Channel Drive and the elevated A train, which serve to create a buffer between the project area and nearby residences. Next slide. In summary, the applicant is proposing a zoning map amendment from an M11 to an M12 zoning district to facilitate the development of a new 6-story self-storage facility. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joy. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. The text indicates that the project area includes 6 city-owned lots. Well, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think it is, that are lots that are owned by DCAS. My question 1 is, what percentage of the project site is comprised of those city-owned lots?
So I know a lot of those lots are partial lots, and most of them, there's a portion that's along Brandreth Creek. There are portions that are within the Rockaway Freeway. So the bulk of the development site would actually be within the project area. So it wouldn't, those are very small portions of the overall project area. I can give you, I don't have the exact number right now, but I can get back to you with that.
So you're saying the city-owned sites don't comprise a lot of the buildable site or the site on where this project would be constructed?
They would not. Again, because they're part of the streets and also Brandreth Creek. So the buildable area would not be containing those decast plots.
We can think about how to portray that on a map or something that so that it's sort of clear what's being affected.
It would be helpful because
Sure.
I think if it were a sizable portion of the site, then obviously a variety of questions would be raised about
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah,
So
happy to add that.
I for one would, like to know precisely how much of city-owned land is critical to the building of the proposed project.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, Commissioner Burney.
So bad luck for this applicant that they had to come right after that project that we just looked at, because that previous project, did a decent effort at stopping their building just looking like a bunker and had a good facade treatment and had a really attractive waterfront access, neither of which this applicant seems to have been able to do. So one wonders, wouldn't waterfront access be required? And can they be encouraged to do a better job of improving the appearance of the facility?
I will definitely pass along the note about the design of the building. But in terms of waterfront public access areas, those are only required for residential, commercial, and community facility developments on waterfront sites. However, the applicant said that they are open to providing access to the waterfront for passive recreation and fishing, as long as it's acceptable to DEC and maintains safety and security. If that's something we're interested in.
Yeah, I hadn't realized that. So for example, so the Gowanus waterfront access, for example, there might still be some industrial sites there, wouldn't there? But there would still be waterfront access along the canal.
There may be.
Yeah, my sense is that if it is a industrial site, and we can look at the special district. Sometimes we've done things with special districts, but I'll flag that for the Gowanus team.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know whether waterfront access would be used at this location if it's pretty heavily manufacturing. But I noticed they do provide, there's a little bit of a green strip on one side of the building, but then it kind of stops. And I don't know quite what they expect. They're just showing it as a kind of a gray push-A. So I don't know what that's supposed to indicate.
Those are supposed to be, it's not technically part of a waterfront access way, but it's required DEC mitigated plantings that they would be putting in. So it would make it look a little bit more attractive, but yeah.
Okay, so maybe we'll see more of that when they come back. Okay,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Robershop?
I was just going to ask who was the operator for the storage facility? And I was just curious. I know you said there was one other storage facility within the area. In comparison to size, is this one relatively the same, or is it bigger, smaller? I'm just curious.
Sure. I believe the applicant would also be the operator, but I can confirm that. But the existing facility, it's a little bit smaller. It was built in 1991, and it's about a half mile away from this site. But the existing facility includes 400 storage units, and then this proposal would include about a little under 1,000.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Okay, this application is certified. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
All right. The fourth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Queens Community District 14, and Joy will present that as well.
Thanks, Ryan. All right. Good afternoon again. Next slide, please. This is returning to the Commission for pre-hearing after it's certified on March 1st. But this is an application that's a joint venture between Brisa Builders Development LLC and God's Battalion of Prayer Properties, Inc. The Project area is located at 426 through 444 Beach 67th Street and encompasses 8 lots in the Arverne neighborhood of Community District 14. The applicants are requesting a map amendment from an R4A to an R6 zoning district, as well as a text amendment to establish an MIH area in order to facilitate the construction of a 100% affordable senior housing building in a charter school. Next slide, please. As you can see on this map, the project area is located in Arverne, approximately 3 miles from downtown Far Rockaway. The area is well served by public transit and is located 2 blocks from the Beach 67th Street A station. It's served by the Q22, QM17, and Q52 SBS bus lines, as well as the Rockaway East New York City ferry shuttle. The project area is also within the 1% annual chance floodplain. Next slide. The project area is outlined here in black, with the development site in red. The surrounding area includes residential uses ranging from 1 to 3-story single, 2-family, and multifamily buildings, as well as community facility uses, which include Public School 42 to the east, as well as a handful of small churches. Commercial uses line Beach Channel Drive to the south and include single-story local retail stores, along with single and 2-family homes. The project area is located at the mid-block flanking Beach 67th Street in a low to medium density neighborhood and includes the development site as well as an 8-story non-complying nursing home. The development site to the east consists of lots 12 through 24, and the proposed district would be mapped 230 feet from Beach Channel Drive. The site is improved with a 2-story church, a 3-story residential building, a community garden, a 34-space parking lot, and vacant land. The co-applicant, God's Battalion of Prayer Properties, Inc., owns all of the properties within the development site. Next slide. Here's some site photos showing existing conditions of the project area looking north, east, southeast along Beach 67th Street. In the top left corner is an existing 3-story residence. The top right shows the 34-space parking lot adjacent to the church. And the bottom left picture shows the existing 2-story Battalion Pentecostal Assembly Church. There are no current improvements planned for the church, and the buildings will remain the same. Next slide. This slide shows views of the project area looking west across Beach 67th Street. In the top left corner, you can see some existing detached homes. In the top right, you can see another home with the 8-story nursing home in the distance. And the bottom left shows the back of the nursing home looking west across Beach 67th Street. Next slide. These site photos give you a better sense of the nursing home, rising to 8 stories, and are taken from the frontage along Beach 68th Street. You can see views of the nursing home looking northeast, east, and southeast along Beach 68th Street. Next slide. The applicants are proposing two new buildings on site. Building 1 would be a 9-story, 60,000 square foot, 100% affordable residential building containing 84 AIRS units, financed through HPD's SARA program, and would consist of studio and 1-bedroom apartments. Building 2 would consist of an 11-story, approximately 72,000 square foot charter school, serving up to 950 pre-K through 5th grade students. As previously mentioned, the existing 2-story church at the far left would remain the same. However, the church is providing unused air rights from lot 24 to the rest of the development site to help facilitate the development of the proposed buildings. Next slide. Here's a plan view of the development site looking east. Circulation into the school and the residential building are indicated by the blue and yellow arrows. 9 parking spaces would be provided for the residences, and 6 would be provided for the school. Entrances for pedestrians and parking would be located along Beach 67th Street. Because the project is within the 1% annual chance floodplain, all interior spaces below base flood elevation would be wet flood proofed in accordance with Appendix G of the building code, and no habitable spaces would be provided below base flood elevation. Next slide. On this slide, you can see the proposed programming within the charter school. The entrance would be on the ground floor with storage in the basement, and a gymnasium, cafeteria, and library are proposed on floors 2 through 5, with the upper levels proposed for classrooms. A small outdoor space is proposed on the 7th floor to comply with the sky exposure plane. Next slide. Here are some renderings of both of the buildings. You can see the 9-story Ayers building on the left and the proposed 11-story charter school on the right. Next slide. The applicant is proposing 2 actions, including a zoning map amendment from an R4A to an R6 zoning district, and the proposed district would be mapped at the mid-block north of Beach Channel Drive. R6 provides medium density and a maximum residential FAR of 3.9 when including Ayers units and a maximum community facility FAR of 4.8. The project area is close to transit and immediately surrounded by medium density buildings, including the 8-story nursing home within the project area and the 5-story PS42, 1 block to the east. Beach 67th Street and Beach 68th Street are both wide streets, and an R6 district is already mapped south of the project area, which includes the Arvin by the Sea development. Next slide. The applicant is also seeking a zoning text amendment to map MIH options 1 and 2. Option 1 would require that 25% of housing floor area be provided at an average of 60% AMI, or about $61,000 annually for a family of 3. MIH option 2 would require that 30% of housing floor area be provided at an average of 80% AMI, or about $82,000 annually for a family of 3. As mentioned, the residential building is proposed to be 100% affordable through HPD's subsidized Ayers program, providing units at an average of 60% AMI. For reference, median household income in the Rockaways is around $61,650 annually. Next slide. Community Board 14 held a public hearing for the project on May 4th, approving the project with the condition that the nursing home is removed from the rezoning boundary. The Queensborough president held a public meeting on the proposal on May 20th and voting in favor of the application with a request for a 30% local hiring commitment, as well as updates from the applicant on this hiring goal once construction begins. Next slide. To provide context on the rezoning boundary again, here's an aerial map of the project area. Block 16041, lot 6 to the west, in the lower left corner, is improved with an 8-story non-complying nursing home, and the proposed district will be mapped to a depth of 100 feet from Beach Channel Drive. From this image, you can get a sense of the surrounding mid-density context that already exists along the block, including PS42 to the east. As previously noted, the project area is also located along Beach 67th Street, which is a wide street, and which the applicant believes can support higher density. Next slide. To summarize, Brisa Builders Development LLC and God's Battalion of Prayer Properties Inc. are seeking a map amendment from an R4A to an R6 zoning district and a text amendment to establish an MIH area in order to facilitate the development of a 9-story, 100% Ayers building and an 11-story charter school. The existing church within the development site would remain the same. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you again, Joy. Questions? Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, so Joy, what is the rationale for including the nursing home site in this action?
Sure, that's a great question. So the existing 280-bed nursing home currently doesn't comply. It's 8 stories. It's currently zoned R4A, and R4A only permits a maximum height of 35 feet or about 3 stories. The nursing home is longstanding institutional use that was constructed in 1974. It's not anticipated to be redeveloped, and it's home to approximately 154 residents. But bringing the nursing home into zoning compliance could allow, we believe, and the applicant believes, for easier observance of the New York State Department of Health requirements for nursing homes, especially if they do decide to make any improvements in the near future. And remaining in a non-complying district may make it more difficult to adhere to these in the future and place additional administrative burdens on the operator.
Okay, well, that all makes sense. But it also suggests that we should at least understand what could happen in the future should the nursing home go away. And residential use be developed there, which I imagine is what the community board is concerned about. I didn't look at the environmental work. Do we have information about what developments, or maybe the environmental probably assumed nothing would happen, but what does R6 residential use on that site look like?
Sure. The EAS did analyze very conservatively a with action scenario where there would be a residential building that would be approximately 201,000 square feet with about 221 units of housing and built to an FAR of 3.6 FAR.
Okay, I'll go to it, take a look. And also with some affordable housing required because we'd be mapping it for MIH.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll go take a look.
Sounds good.
The other thing that I'll know, commissioners, that the department believes that were it to be redeveloped in the way for residential use, that given this particular context of the block, that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
No, thank you. My question was addressed in the exchange. Thank you.
Commissioner Rumpershut.
Yeah, I too had the same question that Commissioner Levin raised. But I do have two quick comments. In our briefing package, I noticed that even though this says 84 units, in the briefing package it shows 83. So if you can clarify that. And also, with regards to the charter school, how many students are proposed to go there?
Sure. So yeah, the discrepancy in the unit count, 84 units would include the supers unit, but it would be 83 AIRS units for seniors. And then as far as the charter school goes, they're projecting about 950 students. That would be pre-K through 5th grade. So
has the ownership gotten in touch, or the applicant got in touch with DOT about creating a drop-off loading zone for the buses for the children?
I know that's a really good question. I believe that they have spoken with them, and I know there was a lot of work that we did in order to work with DOT on providing the restricted declaration. I know DOT wanted to see crossing guards for safety, but I can have the applicant speak more to that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes, just one simple question. Can you refresh memories on the unit configuration? Are these all studios, or there are studios in ones? Do we know what the configuration is of the units?
Sure. So there'll be a mix of studios and 1-bedrooms, but I can actually get the unit count breakdown as well.
Any other questions? Okay, then we will see this at the public hearing on Wednesday.
Thank you.
The fifth item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Brooklyn Community District 2. Our presenter is Connie Chan.
And before Connie starts the presentation, I want to make some observations because I couldn't be more excited about a project, about this project that Connie and Amrita are going to be presenting. I have fond teenage memories of wandering through the recently shuttered Brooklyn Navy Yard in the early 70s. And I'm only admitting this because I'm assuming that the statute of limitations for breaking and entering has long passed. Professionally, I'm overjoyed as we've seen the Navy Yard under brilliant leadership, past and present, be given new life as a jobs hub. The Brooklyn Navy Yard's proposal that we're seeing today is exactly the type of project that the city needs as part of its recovery from the pandemic. With a goal of 30,000 jobs by 2030, the Navy Yard management undertook this master planning proposal that we are looking to certify today. The plan means creating additional workspace for about 19,000 new jobs, and that would be on top of the 11,000 jobs that are already there at the Navy Yard. Now, until now, growth at the Navy Yard has occurred in an ad hoc manner. This occurred as the Navy Yard management sought to repurpose decades and sometimes even a century-old buildings to fit the needs of 21st century creative businesses. Today, the Navy Yard is at 95% occupancy, which is absolutely astounding considering the events of the past year. The Navy Yard's growth is closely tied to its successful training and job placement programs, which connect about 500 local residents to businesses in the Navy Yard each year. And they focus their job training on hiring public housing residents, veterans, and formerly incarcerated New Yorkers. Now, for several years now, the Yard has relied on a series of mayoral zoning overrides to modernize and grow. This included a mayoral zoning override to build and open in 2019 a trade school for 11th and 12th graders. The Navy Yard Special District proposal that's before us is fundamentally different from ad hoc mayoral zoning overrides. It's a well-considered plan developed with very, very significant input from the Department of City Planning. It's a plan that seeks to create zoning tools and the flexibility needed to unlock the next generation of cutting-edge production spaces for manufacturers, fabricators, designers, teachers, scientists, artists, and makers. I'll note that there are some details of the plan that are still being discussed by the Navy Yard and the department, including signage requirements and the minimum percentage of the open space that must be planted area. These are necessary and useful discussions since the zoning resolution's waterfront requirements don't easily mesh with a site as unique and as massive as the Navy Yard, with its industrial character and need for industrial security, and most specifically around its dry docks and wet docks. As these discussions progress in the coming weeks, it's likely that the Navy Yard will identify proposals to address these issues, which they would anticipate providing via an A-text that would be introduced before this project returns to the Commission for pre-hearing review. I'm thrilled to see this master plan take shape and herald in a new era of Brooklyn's waterfront industrial growth, an enhanced pipeline of job training and placement, and a Navy Yard campus that engages with the surrounding communities in new, meaningful ways. And with that, I turn it over to Connie.
Thank you, Marisa. Good afternoon, commissioners. The applicants, Building 77, QAL ICB Inc., and the New York City Department of Small Business Services are seeking a zoning text amendment to establish a new special Brooklyn Navy Yard district that modifies regulations with respect to use, bulk, ground floor streetscape, open space, parking, loading, and the waterfront area. They're also seeking a zoning map amendment to map the newly created special district and change an R6B, M12, and M31 district to an M21 district within the special district. These actions would facilitate the expansion of the Brooklyn Navy Yard through the construction of an additional 4.6 million square feet of space for a total of 11 million square feet of industrial, commercial, and community facility uses. Next. The project area consists of 2 lots located on block 2023 in Brooklyn's Community District 2. Next. The project area occupies most of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and before I describe that in greater detail, I'd like to give some background on the site. The Navy Yard was established in 1801 by the federal government as the New York Naval Shipyard. Over the course of its operations, more than 230 naval warships and auxiliary vessels were built at the Navy Yard. At the height of World War II, nearly 70,000 people were employed at the Navy Yard. Both shipbuilding and employment declined significantly following the end of World War II, and as a result, the federal government decommissioned the Navy Yard as a shipyard in 1966, and the city of New York took ownership of the site in 1969 and reopened it as an industrial park. Next slide. The Navy Yard is located on city-owned property along the waterfront and falls under the jurisdiction of the New York City Small Business Services. Building 77 QAL ICB Inc. is a not-for-profit corporation formed to support its corporate member, the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation. In 1981, the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation, or BNYDC, which is a not-for-profit real estate developer and property manager, was selected by Mayor Koch to manage and develop the Navy Yard on behalf of the city. The city has leased the Navy Yard to BNYDC pursuant to a 99-year ground lease. BNYDC's mission is to create and preserve quality jobs, anchor New York City's modern industrial sector and its businesses, and connect the local community with resources and economic opportunity at the Navy Yard and beyond. BNYDC supports the city's industrial economy by providing affordable, stable rents and long-term flexible leases to industrial tenants. In 1989, the Navy Yard had approximately 2,700 workers in various types of companies, including ship repair, distribution, and small-scale manufacturing. Today, there are more than 11,000 workers and 450 businesses at the Navy Yard. To facilitate this employment growth, BNYDC has invested in the rehabilitation of millions of square feet of space in existing buildings at the Navy Yard and constructed over 2 million square feet of new space. It is a 95% occupancy rate, reflecting a high demand for space. Given the limited remaining building stock requiring renovation to be put into productive use and strong demand for its space, BNYDC expects that the large majority of the Navy Yard's growth in the future must be met through new development. In 2018, BNYDC completed the development of the Brooklyn Navy Yard Master Plan. The master plan envisioned new development to accommodate an increase in employment to 30,000 employees by 2030 and enhance industrial operations while further integrating the Navy Yard into the surrounding community and solidifying the Navy Yard's role as a national urban model for sustainable middle-class job development. The proposed actions will support the realization of this master plan. Next. The Navy Yard is located on the Brooklyn waterfront in between the Manhattan and Williamsburg bridges. It is surrounded by several neighborhoods, including Vinegar Hill to the north and west, downtown Brooklyn to the southeast, Wallabout, Fort Greene, and Clinton Hill to the south, and Williamsburg to the north and east. The Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, an arterial highway, which is elevated approximately 30 feet above grade with a width of 160 feet, connects to Queens and southern Brooklyn, and it runs along the southern edge of the surrounding area. Next slide. To the northwest of the Navy Yard are 1 to 5 story industrial uses, including the Red Hook Water Pollution Control Plant and Con Edison facilities. The Vinegar Hill neighborhood to the west of the Navy Yard is predominantly residential with some community facility, commercial, and industrial uses. To the west of the Navy Yard, across Navy Street, are the New York City Housing Authority's Farragut Houses, a complex of 10 14-story residential buildings. Admiral's Row Plaza is located at the intersection of Navy Street and Flushing Avenue in the southwest corner. While it is part of the Navy Yard, it is outside of the area affected by the proposed actions and not part of the project area. It is a 287,000 square foot mixed commercial and industrial development comprised of 5 buildings and a surface parking lot. The Wallabout neighborhood immediately to the south of Flushing Avenue features a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial buildings, including loft buildings. Many of these buildings range from 1 to 7 stories, with some 12 and 13-story residential buildings. Directly to the east of the Navy Yard, the surrounding area is predominantly residential, with buildings ranging from 2 to 4 stories, and some 8 and 9-story residential buildings. And further east, residential buildings increase in height to 6 to 25 stories. There are a number of open spaces in the surrounding area, as shown here in green. Next slide. A portion of the Navy Yard and areas in the surrounding area to the west, south, and southeast are mapped within M12 district. M12 districts allow for a floor area ratio of up to 2 for a range of commercial and industrial uses, and 4.8 FAR for a limited number of permitted community facility uses. Admiral Rose Plaza, which is within the Navy Yard, but again, outside of the project area, is located in an M14 district, which also allows for an FAR of up to 2 for a range of commercial and industrial uses, with a maximum FAR of community facility uses of 6.5. The majority of the Navy Yard and areas located to the northwest are mapped in an M31 district. M31 districts allow for a maximum FAR of 2 for a range of commercial and industrial uses. There are a variety of commercial uses allowed in both M1 and M3 districts, including offices, eating and drinking establishments, and retail. Most larger retail establishments, which are those in excess of 10,000 square feet, are not allowed in M3 districts and are only allowed in M1 districts by CPC special permit. In M12, M14, and M31 districts, buildings are permitted a base height of 60 feet or 4 stories within an initial setback distance. And beyond that setback distance, building form is governed by a sky exposure plane. M31 and M12 districts impose parking requirements that vary by use. A small portion of the Navy Yard and the surrounding area to the northwest is zoned R6B. R6B districts allow for a maximum of 2 FAR for residential and community facility uses. There are several medium density residential districts in the surrounding area, including R6, R7, and R8 districts, including those districts with commercial overlays, which allow for a range of residential, community facility, and commercial uses at varying densities. The project area, which is outlined in the black dotted line, consists of block 2023, lots 150, and the majority of lot 1. This constitutes the majority of the Navy Yard, again, with the exception of Admiral Rose Plaza. This area occupies approximately 300 acres. Most of the project area is located in M31 district, with small portions zoned M12 and even smaller portions zoned R6B. Next slide. There are a number of CPC actions that have affected the Navy Yard in recent decades. This includes a rezoning and a series of special permits and other actions to facilitate the development of Admiral Rose Plaza in 2011, which I'll describe in a moment. And there have been 4 mayoral overrides to facilitate growth of the Navy Yard in the last decade. In 2013, an override was obtained to permit a college and university in an M31 district to establish the Brooklyn College Graduate School of Cinema. In 2015, an override was obtained to reduce accessory parking requirements for Dock 72, a 555,000 square foot commercial office building along the waterfront. In 2017, an override was obtained to permit a 675 square foot illuminated sign at Building 77 along Flushing Avenue. And in 2018, an override was obtained to permit a school use in an M31 district to facilitate the establishment of the Brooklyn STEAM Center, a career and technical education program serving high school students. Rather than continuing to seek individual land use actions incrementally over time, the actions proposed as part of this application would allow BNYDC to pursue the overall growth and long-term vision contemplated by the master plan over the next decades. Next slide. A significant portion of the project area is located within the 100-year flood zone, which is shown in blue, and large portions are also within the limit of moderate wave action zone, or LMWA, which is shown in the dotted red line. This area is subject to wave heights of up to 3 feet. Next slide. The project area is bounded by Navy Street to the west, mapped at 80 feet wide, Wallabout Channel and the Navy Yard Basin of the East River to the north, Kent Avenue to the northeast, which is mapped at 87 to 90 feet wide, Williamsburg Street West to the southeast, which is mapped at 46 feet wide, and Flushing Avenue to the south, mapped at 70 feet wide. It is a large and unique site comprised of a range of buildings and tenants across varying industries. Next. The project area is currently improved with approximately 6.3 million square feet or 0.5 FAR of industrial, commercial, and community facility floor area across approximately 80 buildings organized around a private street network on an irregular grid. The majority of this floor area consists of Navy-built structures that have been renovated, while approximately 1.6 million square feet consists of new construction. The estimated square footages by use categories is shown in this table. Next. The Navy Yard has an active waterfront with uses including ship repair and maintenance at numerous bulkheads and 4 dry docks, cement production and delivery, aggregate delivery, and a ferry home port. Next. Here are some images of the types of spaces used by manufacturers at the Navy Yard. Manufacturing uses include a wide range of industries, such as modular construction, textile, metal and scenery fabrication, food packing and distribution, printing, and breweries and distilleries. Next. And here are some images of the types of spaces used by commercial tenants at the Navy Yard. Commercial tenants include architecture, art, and design studios, and co-working offices. Technology companies in the fields of robotics, artificial intelligence, smart infrastructure, and urban technologies test their prototypes on the path towards small-scale manufacturing. Media production studios include Steiner Studios, the largest film studio in the country outside of Hollywood, which occupies approximately 50 acres in the southeastern portion of the Navy Yard. Next. Community facility uses at the Navy Yard include the STEAM Center, which provides career and technical education programs for approximately 300 11th and 12th grade high school students. The STEAM Center creates a pathway for local students to obtain jobs in industries located at the Navy Yard and provides Navy Yard tenants with a pipeline of skilled workers. It occupies 31,000 square feet of space in Building 77 And these photos show some of the spaces in that school. Other community facility uses include the Brooklyn College Graduate School of Cinema, which offers instruction in a variety of filmmaking disciplines and is the only graduate film school operating on a studio lot in the country. Students get hands-on experience in filmmaking and connect with employment opportunities while giving practitioners access to academic research and technological advances. The New York City College of Technology, or City Tech, provides hands-on training in solar voltaics for certifications in renewable energy. And New York University's Tandon School of Engineering operates our lab, which is a research center for virtual and augmented reality. Next. The perimeter of the Navy Yard is enclosed and the interior is accessible at 4 security controlled vehicular gates that are shown in red. 2 additional vehicular gates that are shown in yellow provide access to the Steiner Studios campus. This perimeter treatment protects the public from the working waterfront and frequent truck deliveries and ensures the security of intellectual property and other sensitive information. In the areas shown in green and in the buildings shaded in the light blue, which is located in front of buildings 92 and 77 along Flushing Avenue at the bottom of this image, the public can access open space and programming within the Navy Yard in a way that does not interfere with manufacturing activities. Visitors who arrive at the Navy Yard by ferry land at Dock 72, and those who do not work at the Navy Yard or are visitors without a visitor pass exit the yard by walking to the ground floor of Building 77 to access Flushing Avenue, by biking to the yard's Clinton Avenue gate, or taking one of the free autonomous shuttles that transport ferry riders from the ferry landing to the perimeter of the yard at the Cumberland Gate at Flushing Avenue. Next slide. So here are some photos of the perimeter condition around the yard. Here showing the northeast and southeast conditions along Kent Avenue and Flushing Avenue. Next. And here are some additional photos of the perimeter condition along Flushing Avenue. Next. And images of the perimeter along Navy Street. Next. And now we'll show some existing conditions photos from within the Navy Yard. So here are 2 buildings in the northeastern section of the Navy Yard. Next. The top photo here is the northern portion of the Steiner Studios campus. And on the bottom is a view of Building 3 and Building 77, which are located along Flushing Avenue. Next. And here are some photos of buildings in the western area of the Navy Yard. Next. And some photos along the waterfront. On top is the New York City Ferry home port, and on the bottom is the Dock 72 office building that I referenced earlier. Next. The NYDC administers workforce development initiatives to support its tenants and connect surrounding communities to local jobs in manufacturing and creative industries. The Albert C. Wiltshire Employment Center is located in Building 92 on Flushing Avenue. It maintains job listings, assists job seekers in identifying positions, and prepares job seekers for interviews. The Employment Center works to find employment for New York City Housing Authority residents, veterans, individuals who have been previously involved in the justice system, and those who have been long-term unemployed. It places approximately 500 local residents in jobs, both within and outside of the Navy Yard each year. Next. In 2015, a transportation strategic plan was developed for the Navy Yard for the purpose of improving travel to work for existing and future employees. The plan identified a series of transportation management strategies designed to promote mass transit and disincentivize driving to the Navy Yard. Strategies included upgrading the Navy Yard's private shuttle service, providing ferry connections to the Navy Yard, creating new bus connections, improving streetscape conditions, modifying the parking system, and promoting cycling. As a result of these efforts, car use was reduced from 37% of all trips to the Navy Yard in 2015 to 22% of all trips in 2019. Implementation of transportation management strategies is ongoing and dynamic, with modifications to existing initiatives and new strategies being developed to accommodate growth. Next. This slide shows some of the transportation connections to and from the Navy Yard. Again, the ferry stop, which is located on Dock 72, is on the Astoria route, which connects Astoria to Pier 11 and Manhattan. The blue and green lines shown are routes of the Navy Yard's 2 shuttle service lines. So the blue line is the Dumbo route, and that provides connections to the York Street F station and the High Street A and C subway station, which are located 3 and 6 blocks to the west. In green, the Atlantic Terminal route provides connections to the Nevin Street subway station and Atlantic Terminal, as well as the Clinton Washington G station. The Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway is a 26-mile route for pedestrians and cyclists that runs along the project area along Kent Avenue, Flushing Avenue, and Navy Street, and is shown in the dashed blue line. There are approximately 3,000 accessory surface parking spaces at the Navy Yard, including 2,000 spaces spread across the yard and 1,000 spaces within Steiner Studios. Additionally, there are 460 spaces within a building along Sand Street on the western side of the yard, which are shared between Navy Yard tenants and Admiral's Row visitors. The existing parking supply available to the yard exceeds the existing parking demand. On an average weekday, approximately 1,500 cars enter through the yard's gates. And there are approximately 154 outdoor bicycle parking spaces across the Navy Yard and an indoor bike facility in Building 77. And there are 5 city bike docking stations with 80 bicycles within the Navy Yard, excuse me. Next. So before I describe the proposed development in more detail, I want to highlight the 3 development parcels where the majority of new floor area is anticipated to be developed. The Navy Street parcel is located on the western side of the Navy Yard and is currently occupied by an NYPD tow pound. This includes an 11,000 square foot processing center for people retrieving their cars. The Flushing Avenue parcel is located on Flushing Avenue between Vanderbilt and Washington Avenues. This parcel is currently occupied by 2 buildings. On the western part of the parcel, Building 120 is a 2-story, 36,000 square foot building that houses Navy Yard tenants. And the eastern part of the parcel is actually owned by the federal government and occupied by the Department of Justice, who utilizes a 60,000 square foot 1-story building and surface parking lot for material storage. The barge basin parcel includes both sides of the barge basin, which is an approximately 200-foot wide waterway that juts into the Navy Yard. This parcel in the northeast section of the Navy Yard fronts along Kent Avenue. It's occupied by 2 1-story buildings with a total of 25,000 square feet, and those buildings are used by Steiner Studios for set construction and storage. The remainder of the parcel is used for truck storage and storage for a modular construction tenant at the Navy Yard. Next slide. The proposed development would expand the Navy Yard through an additional 4.6 million square feet of industrial, commercial, and community facility space for a total of 11 million square feet of floor area. The majority of this new development is anticipated to occur in new construction buildings located on the 3 development parcels I just described. At full build out, it is envisioned to support a total of 30,000 jobs and will also include approximately 189,000 square feet of new publicly accessible open space. Next. This growth will accommodate many of the same uses that exist at the Navy Yard today that are permitted as of right. Those uses are shown in the top of the list. The proposed development would also include uses that are not permitted as of right today. These are schools, colleges and universities, museums, a broader range of retail and services, and physical culture establishments. Building on the success of existing academic uses in the Navy Yard, the master plan envisions expanded opportunities for educational uses and educational programming that have a symbiotic relationship with industrial and maritime uses at the Navy Yard. Academic and training programs are envisioned to focus on industries and sectors that include engineering, metal fabrication and welding, carpentry, design build processes, marine construction and shipbuilding, and renewable energy production. These programs would not only train students for careers and high quality jobs, but also connect these students with employment opportunities in the Navy Yard and help tenants of the yard find skilled workers. In addition, other new community facility uses, such as a science and technology museum, would invite the surrounding community and the broader public to learn about and promote interest in manufacturing and the Navy Yard. A broader range of retail uses, including establishments greater than 10,000 square feet in size, will serve workers and provide a physical marketplace for Navy Yard tenants to showcase and sell their products. And amenities like health clubs and childcare will support the growing on-site workforce. Next slide. The square footages and FARs for the existing condition, the proposed new floor area, and the total envisioned development are shown here. Next slide. The master plan envisions expanding upon the mix of uses, including enhanced spaces for industrial operators, while providing additional uses and amenities to support the growing on-site workforce and better connect the Navy Yard with the surrounding communities. The provision of modern manufacturing space with daylighting and optimized logistics will be prioritized. During the master plan process, BNYDC worked with design consultants and an international design and research firm specializing in urbanism and architecture to develop the broad concept of the master plan buildings. The applicants contemplate vertically integrated buildings that accommodate the life cycle of a business. These buildings could have up to 2 large double height XL industrial floors, each of which would be up to 40 feet tall in height, with large floor plates and limited columns in the base of the buildings. These spaces would accommodate companies with large-scale products or companies with large-scale manufacturing needs serving local, regional, national, or international markets. Small to medium-scale manufacturing space would be located in the intermediate or upper stories with ceiling heights between 11 and 20 feet for prototyping and manufacturing. The upper floors of the buildings would also contain office space supporting technology, research, and startup companies working to develop products and services with ceiling heights between 11 and 15 feet. These buildings would also include educational uses and public programming, as well as public open space, shared amenities, and retail to support the yard's growing workforce. Retail and amenity space is envisioned to be located on the ground floors as well. Moving forward, BNYDC will be seeking input from end users, other modern manufacturers, and design professionals to advance the design of these buildings. Because the Navy Yard is city-owned property, all new development and open spaces will be subject to PDC review. Next. So here are diagrams showing potential massings at each of the development parcels, and we'll describe each site in more detail, starting with the Flushing Avenue site. Next. So here is a rendering of the Flushing Avenue development, which envisions 2 buildings with a total of approximately 1.25 million square feet of space. The form of both buildings would relate to Building 77, which is located directly to the west on your left in this rendering. That building is set back from Flushing Avenue and has a publicly accessible plaza in front. These buildings will have base heights of 200 feet and an overall height of approximately 325 feet. They'll be set back 50 feet from Flushing Avenue with new public open space along the Flushing Avenue frontage. And visual corridors will provide sightlines into the Navy Yard. Next slide. In addition to the manufacturing, office, retail, and amenity space in these buildings, a high school is also envisioned to occupy 100,000 square feet within the western building. This could be an extension of the STEAM Center located in the adjacent Building 77 or another career and technical education program. The ground floor manufacturing space in the eastern building could also include opportunities for food manufacturing companies to showcase their products, similar to the food hall that exists in the base of Building 77. The square footages by use category for the development on this site are shown here in this table. Next slide. This diagram shows a potential ground floor condition. The red and pink areas represent public programming and public access points. The public facing programming is intended to be oriented towards Flushing Avenue and adjacent to the public open space. Next slide. Parking and loading is envisioned to be located below grade and would be accessed internally from within the yard to minimize impact on Flushing Avenue. Next slide. Now we'll describe the barge basin site in more detail. This site is comprised of 2 parcels, again separated by the barge basin. Next slide. This site will be comprised of multiple buildings with a total of approximately 2.5 million square feet of space between the 2 parcels. Here is a rendering of development on the western parcel viewed from within the yard, illustrating the lower XL floors and smaller scale production spaces above. Next slide. The eastern parcel, which has frontage along Kent Avenue, will be developed with 1 building, and the western parcel will be comprised of 2 or 3 buildings. This site will provide public access to the waterfront along both sides of the barge basin. In addition to the manufacturing and office space in the base and upper stories, the ground floor is envisioned to have amenities, showroom space, and retail that will promote and feature products developed at the Navy Yard. A school focusing on maritime or renewable energy technologies could occupy approximately 35,000 square feet of space in one of the buildings on the western parcel. The square footages by use category for this development site are shown in the table. Next. This diagram shows two possible massings of the building located on the eastern parcel, which is irregularly shaped. The building will be set back along Kent Avenue to create a sidewalk condition that is 15 feet in width, and the building is comprised of 3 tiers. The bases shown here are between 60 and 85 feet. The intermediate portions are set back 30 feet from the base along the barge basin and have heights up to 250 feet, and the upper or tower portions of the buildings are reaching heights of 375 feet with a total of 20 stories. As these massings show, the intermediate and tower portions can have different orientations. Next slide. This diagram shows two possible massings of the buildings located on the western parcel. The buildings are also composed of 3 tiers. The bases shown here have heights up to 85 feet. The intermediate portions will set back 30 feet from the base along the barge basin and are shown to have heights up to 210 feet, and the tower portions are reaching heights up to 375 feet with a total of 19 stories. The massing approach would be such that it is responsive to the barge basin adjacency with street wall continuity, facade articulation, and tower location and orientation that facilitates a varied and appropriate building form along public-facing building edges. Next slide. This diagram shows a potential ground floor condition. In yellow are the public open spaces. The areas that are outlined in black along the waterfront and Kent Avenue represent public programming, such as showroom and makerspace and public access points. Next slide. Parking and loading would be located in the base of the buildings. On the western parcel, access would be provided internally from within the Navy Yard. And on the eastern parcel, a curb cut is envisioned along Kent Avenue at the northern end of that parcel to provide access to parking and loading. Next slide. A total of 189,000 square feet of open space will be provided upon full build out. Along both parcels, a waterfront esplanade will run along the barge basin. At the eastern parcel, there'll be 2 publicly accessible connections between Kent Avenue and the waterfront esplanade at the northern and southern ends of the parcel. Those are shown in the blue arrow and the hatched green area. Next slide. Here are pedestrian perspectives showing a potential esplanade condition along both of those parcels. Next slide. And here is a rendering of the barge basin site from the southern end of the barge basin looking north towards the eastern parcel. The publicly accessible open space would include a combination of hardscape, plantings, seating, lighting, and artwork, potentially including artifacts from the Navy Yard's naval past. Next slide. And now we'll describe the Navy Street development in more detail. Next. So here is a rendering of that development, which envisions 1 or possibly 2 buildings with a total of approximately 851,000 square feet of space and 35,000 square feet of publicly accessible open space. In addition to the manufacturing and office space in these buildings, a museum of approximately 60,000 square feet, potentially focused on technology, science, and engineering, could be located in the base of the building. And approximately 100,000 square feet of college and university space for an academic institution with programs that are compatible with the focus areas of the museum could also be located in the upper levels of the building. The ground floor is envisioned to have retail and amenity space. The square footages by use category for the development on this site are shown in this table. Next slide. This diagram shows 2 possible massings and open space configurations. The bases of the buildings shown here have heights of up to 80 feet, with the intermediate portions set back from the base, with heights reaching approximately 170 feet, and the upper portions reaching heights of up to 395 feet. Next slide. This diagram shows a potential ground floor condition. Again, the red and pink areas represent public programming and public access points. The public-facing programming would be oriented towards Navy Street and the public open space. Next slide. Parking and loading is anticipated to be located below grade. Parking would be accessed from within the Navy Yard, and 1 new curb cut on Navy Street would provide access to loading. Next slide. BNYDC will continue to implement their transportation management plan. One of the goals of the plan is to reduce vehicular traffic and develop buildings with loading berths that suit the needs of their tenants, which is anticipated to be less than what the underlying zoning requires. It is expected that the new buildings will provide approximately 800 parking spaces and 29 loading docks. While most of the new development is anticipated to be located within the 3 perimeter districts, the applicant does envision a limited amount of new community facility space in the core of the Navy Yard. Next slide. The core is shaded in red here. Approximately 3 new trade and technical schools with a total of up to 50,000 square feet could be located in the core area. One planned project that exemplifies this vision is a welding facility that would allow the existing Brooklyn Steam Center to incorporate welding training and certification into its curriculum, providing more career opportunities in design, construction, and fabrication. Another example of an existing use that may be expanded upon in the core subdistrict is the existing Brooklyn base for the New York Harbor Marine School, the New York Harbor School's Marine Systems Technology Pathway, which trains high school students for careers in marine engineering, marine mechanics, and metal fabrication. Improvements to the facility and flexibility for an expansion would enhance the hands-on learning environment adjacent to an active shipyard, a modular construction production facility, and proximate to metalwork studios. And finally, BNYDC plans to partner with academic institutions and develop workforce training for offshore wind certifications, which would provide a pipeline of trained professionals to grow offshore wind industries along the Navy Yard's waterfront. Next slide. The applicant is seeking a zoning text amendment and a zoning map amendment to facilitate the proposed development. Next slide. The zoning text amendment would create and establish a new special Brooklyn Navy Yard district that establishes sub-districts and associated sub-areas and modifies regulations regarding use, bulk, ground floor streetscape, open space, parking, loading, and the waterfront area. Next slide. First, I'll describe the sub-districts and sub-areas. Next. 4 sub-districts will be established. The 3 perimeter sub-districts are the Navy Street subdistrict, the Flushing subdistrict, and the Barge Basin subdistrict. The core subdistrict encompasses the areas that are not included in the perimeter subdistrict. Next slide. Within the Navy Street subdistrict, the Navy Street Central sub-area is established. The sub-area is the development parcel where new construction is anticipated. Next slide. Within the Flushing subdistrict, the Flushing West and Flushing East sub-area would be established. The sub-area is on the east, Flushing East is the development parcel where new construction is anticipated. Next slide. And within the Barge Basin subdistrict, the Barge Basin West and the Barge Basin East sub-areas would be established. Next slide. And now we'll describe the modifications of the underlying regulations within the special district, within the sub-districts and sub-areas of the special district. Next. Use modifications. Use modifications of underlying regulations within the special district would allow for unenclosed sidewalk cafes to be permitted and additional uses to be permitted within the underlying M2 and M3 districts within the special district. Next slide. The M2 districts proposed are, as part of the zoning map amendment, are coterminous with the 3 perimeter districts, and the following uses would be permitted in those M2 districts. Use group 3A community facilities, except those with sleeping accommodations. All use group 6C, 9A, 10A, and 12B commercial uses not otherwise permitted. Physical culture establishments, and use group 18 distilleries and breweries. Next slide. The additional community facility and commercial uses that would be permitted in M2 districts would be subject to the following caps in each of the perimeter subdistricts. Up to 300,000 square feet for all newly permitted community facility and commercial uses. And within that 300,000 square foot cap, up to 100,000 square feet would be permitted for newly allowable commercial uses. Next slide. In the core subdistrict, which is zoned M31, schools and colleges and universities would be permitted by CPC authorization. And now I will pass things along to my colleague, Amrita Mahesh, to describe the remainder of the actions. For the remainder of the text amendment, this includes regulations regarding bulk, ground floor streetscape, open space, parking and loading, and the waterfront. Next slide.
Thank you, Connie. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'll start with the proposed modifications to the bulk regulations. The proposed special district would modify the underlying bulk regulations within the Flushing East sub-area and the Barge Basin sub-district and create a new bulk special permit. Modifications to bulk regulations would offer sufficient envelope flexibility that is needed to support the building typology envisioned by the master plan to accommodate a mix of spaces for different users, including industrial tenants that require large floor plates and high ceilings, along with other industrial, commercial, and community facility tenants in vertically integrated buildings. Next slide. Within the Flushing East sub-area, Flushing Avenue would be deemed a wide street for the purposes of applying height and setback regulations. The 5.6:1 wide street sky exposure plane regulations would apply, and the sky exposure plane would be measured from a height of 60 feet or 4 stories, whichever is lower. Buildings must be set back a minimum of 50 feet from Flushing Avenue. The setback between the building and the street line must be improved as publicly accessible open space. Next slide. Also, 2 view corridors with a minimum width of 50 feet would be required to allow for visual access into the Navy Yard and waterfront. 1 view corridor would be required at the prolongation of Vanderbilt Avenue. A second view corridor would be required either at the prolongation of Clinton or Waverly Avenues to accommodate site planning flexibility for building placement in the future. Next slide. Within the Barge Basin subdistrict, modified bulk regulations tailored to the waterfront context would apply. Buildings would be required to set back a minimum of 40 feet from the basin within the Barge Basin East sub-area and a minimum of 50 feet from the basin within the Barge Basin West sub-area. The portion between the building and the barge basin would be required to be improved as publicly accessible open space in the form of a waterfront esplanade. A sidewalk widening would be required on the Barge Basin East sub-area to achieve a minimum sidewalk width of 15 feet along Kent Avenue. A 5.6:1 sky exposure plane would apply along the Barge Basin and Kent Avenue frontages, as well as any portions of the building facing the southern boundary line of the Barge Basin subdistrict. The sky exposure plane would be measured from the maximum base height of 85 feet or 6 stories, whichever is lower. Building portions that intersect with the sky exposure plane would be deemed towers. Additional bulk controls for towers would apply. Next slide. Towers would be permitted to penetrate the sky exposure plane, provided that tower lot coverage does not exceed 40% of the lot area of the individual zoning lot. Tower width facing the shoreline would be limited to no more than 200 feet. Street wall location requirements would also apply. 70% of the street wall must be located within 88 feet of the Barge Basin setback line or street line. This portion must rise to a minimum height of 30 feet or 2 stories. The bulk regulations would permit certain portions of buildings that are set back further to rise sheer to allow for facade articulation, as long as these street wall segments are no greater than 100 feet in length. Next slide. The proposed special district would also create a new bulk special permit to offer relief and facilitate modifications to all underlying bulk regulations. Next slide. The special district would establish ground floor use and streetscape requirements along public street frontages and publicly accessible open spaces. Along these frontages, at least 50% of the street wall width must be occupied with floor area. This requirement would be reduced to 25% of the street wall width, where the floor area is attributed to use groups 11, 16, 17, or 18. The portion of the ground floor allocated to the minimum floor area requirement would be subject to a 50% glazing requirement. The glazing requirement would also be reduced for use groups 11, 16, 17, or 18 to 25% glazing. Blank wall mitigation requirements would apply for the threshold set forth in the zoning resolution for type 1 blank walls, which exceed 50 feet in length. Mitigation elements such as planting, seating, bike racks, and art would be required. Screening requirements would also apply along all other portions of the building facades with parking and loading areas. Additionally, screening and blank wall mitigation requirements would extend to secondary street frontages, which consist of building portions within 50 feet of a primary street frontage. Next slide. This table shows the amount and configuration of required open space for each of the perimeter sub-districts. The special district would establish requirements for publicly accessible open space in connection with new development in 4 areas: the Flushing East sub-area, the Barge Basin East and Barge Basin West sub-areas, and the Navy Central sub-area. In the Flushing East sub-area, publicly accessible open space with a minimum depth of 50 feet must extend along the entire length of the street wall between a building and Flushing Avenue. In the Barge Basin East sub-area, a minimum of 30% of the sub-area must be improved as publicly accessible open space. A plaza at the southern end of the parcel connecting Kent Avenue to the waterfront esplanade, and a 30-foot pedestrian connection along the northern boundary connecting Kent Avenue to the esplanade would also be required. In the Barge Basin West sub-area, a minimum of 20% of the sub-area must be improved as publicly accessible open space, with a widened esplanade entry area at the southern end of the Barge Basin. In the Navy Central sub-area, a minimum of 15% of the lot area of the Navy Central sub-area must be improved as publicly accessible open space. Minimum dimensional requirements would also apply in certain areas. Next slide. Open space proportional to each phase of development would be required. Design requirements for public access areas would include minimum requirements for the amount of planted areas, width of circulation paths, amount and types of seating, and public space signage systems. A new chair certification regarding compliance with the public space regulations will be required before any excavation or building permit is issued. Up to 10% of a building's industrial floor area may be occupied prior to completion of the open space. A temporary certificate of occupancy for additional floor area may not be issued prior to substantial completion of the required open spaces for all additional floor area. Next slide. Some modest new development that is intended to be temporary in nature will be permitted without a requirement to provide publicly accessible open space. This will allow for buildings with floor area up to 5% of the parcel's lot area to be occupied by uses accessory to a use group 16, 17, or 18 use already present in the Navy Yard. Those buildings would not be permitted within areas where publicly accessible open spaces would be required. This provision recognizes the long-term nature of the master plan and allows for ongoing accessory uses such as storage that support existing uses at the Navy Yard. Next slide. The special district would modify parking, loading, and curb cut regulations. While the underlying parking regulations of ZR 4421 would apply within the special district, if a transportation management plan has been prepared, those requirements would not be applicable and no parking would be required. Surveys on travel modes, parking utilization, etc., would need to be conducted on an annual basis and must be reported every 3 years. The underlying loading requirements will not apply in the special district, allowing for flexibility to optimize loading based on the program and operating needs of the Navy Yard's existing and future tenants. Access to loading and parking within the perimeter sub-districts will be limited to 1 curb cut along the public street frontages. 1 additional curb cut may be permitted along Kent Avenue by chair certification and would require approval by the Department of Transportation. Next slide. waterfront zoning regulations would be made inapplicable, except with certain exceptions. The proposed special district would include regulations for waterfront areas that are tailored to respond to the unique spatial and operational needs of the Navy Yard. The shoreline, for the purposes of applying zoning regulations, is typically defined as the mean high water line. The special district would establish a fixed location for the shoreline, primarily based on the mean high water line as of the date of adoption, given the unique site configuration and waterfront edge conditions of the Navy Yard, considered in conjunction with the dynamic nature of the mean high water line. As noted previously, the project site is located within moderate and high-risk flood zones and could experience future daily tidal inundation based on the New York City Panel on Climate Change sea level rise projections. To accommodate space for potential campus-wide mitigation strategies, a shoreline setback would be established. Buildings would be required to set back a minimum of 30 feet from the shoreline to allow space for mitigation measures that may be implemented in the future and could incrementally tie into district-wide strategies. The 30-foot setback would not be applicable to water-dependent uses. A chairperson certification would be available to reduce the 30-foot setback, provided that the development seeking the waiver incorporates flood protection measures for the immediate area of the building, accounting for sea level rise up to 58 inches from the mean high water line as of the date of adoption. The 58 inches is based on the high-end future sea level rise projections for the 2080s. Setback relief may also be obtained if a district-wide resilience plan for the Navy Yard incorporates protections for the development seeking a setback waiver. Next slide. The second action is a zoning map amendment, which would establish the special Brooklyn Navy Yard district and change an R6B M12 and an M31 district to an M21 district within the new special district. That concludes the overview of the proposed actions being sought by the applicant. I'll turn it back over to Connie, who will walk through some topics of ongoing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrita. Next slide. DCP and the applicant have worked together to develop the proposed actions. One aspect of this process has been crafting regulations that support the unique types of uses and building typology that the master plan envisions, while also maintaining consistency with citywide policies and best practices with respect to the design of publicly accessible open spaces. This is truly a unique project in that the bases of these buildings are envisioned to accommodate industrial tenants and their associated logistical needs, while also providing new publicly accessible open space, including waterfront open space. At times, we have found there to be a tension between the needs of industrial tenants, needs such as privacy, security, and logistics, and the best practices that we as an agency know from decades of experience and research on what makes for dynamic and welcoming public spaces, things like active ground floor uses and transparency. Together, we want to strike the right balance between ensuring that the spaces for industrial tenants are appropriate to their needs and that the adjacent open space is active and inviting to all. While we have made great strides in this area, there are a number of provisions in this application where we have yet to arrive at a final conclusion. I will highlight those provisions where the applicant intends to introduce proposals to continue discussions after certification, and we anticipate that it's possible that there could be modifications. The first provision is the exemption from open space requirements for developments that are intended to be modest and temporary in nature. Uses that support industrial uses that are at the core of the Navy Yard and would be demolished when the master plan buildings are constructed. The proposed text currently allows for new development with floor area up to 5% of the parcel's lot area if occupied by uses that are accessory to industrial uses already present at the Navy Yard. Those buildings could not be located where public open space is required to be provided. The applicant will make a case for modified criteria, and we will continue to discuss that. The second provision relates to the timing of completed open space with respect to occupancy of the buildings. It is standard practice to withhold temporary certificates of occupancy for a building or portions of a building until the associated required open space is substantially complete and made available to the public. This ensures that the delivery of open space happens when the building is occupied, not after. This is the case with POPs and waterfront public access areas. In this case, both the agency and the applicants would like to allow for the buildings to be occupied by some industrial users prior to the required open space being made available to the public. Ground up new construction for manufacturing uses poses unique challenges, and the scale of these spaces, both with respect to form and overall square footage, is truly unique. We believe that this provision is consistent with citywide policies to support and nurture the city's industrial and manufacturing sectors. However, we want to strike a balance between those goals and the timely delivery of open space. The proposal currently allows for 10% of industrial floor area to be occupied prior to substantial completion of the required open space, but we anticipate ongoing discussions about this provision and potential modifications. Next slide. The next set of provisions relate to ground floor streetscape requirements. The requirement that 50% of the street wall along public-facing frontages be occupied with floor area is standard in the city's waterfront public access areas. And the 30-foot minimum floor area depth requirement is the baseline standard in the zoning resolution, where non-residential uses are required on the ground floor. The purpose of these requirements is to ensure that the frontages along streets and open spaces are active and enhance the pedestrian experience. The purpose of the minimum floor area depth is to ensure viable spaces for commercial uses, including retail. The proposal currently maintains these requirements with a reduced requirement applicable to industrial uses. However, the applicant has expressed a desire for additional flexibility. This includes a reduced floor area requirement along the Barge Basin East parcel frontage and a reduced floor area depth to 15 feet to better allow for parking, loading, and logistics related to the industrial uses. The applicant will make the case for this additional flexibility, and it is possible that these requirements might be modified. The next provision relates to planting within the open space. Within all waterfront public access areas, a 50% planting requirement applies. In POPs, there is a 20% planting requirement. The agency recognizes that unlike most waterfront public access areas that accompany residential or mixed residential developments, the master plan buildings are entirely non-residential in nature, and site planning flexibility to accommodate grading strategies for flood mitigation is desired. Therefore, we believe that the planting requirement, which is more akin to POPs, which is 20%, is appropriate. The applicant has expressed a desire for a planting requirement that is lower than 20% to achieve its vision for an open space that is more hardscape in nature and will include other elements such as pathways, plantings, including raised planters, artwork, maritime or industrial elements, and additional tables and chairs above the requirement. The applicant will make the case for that vision and the associated planting requirement, which again could potentially modify these requirements. And finally, given the increase in public-facing uses and amenities, the master plan envisioned zoning relief to facilitate signage that would promote placemaking and improve wayfinding to the Navy Yard. This could include relief for signage height, size, and illumination that would apply to a limited number of signs. The applicant will share a full signage proposal that addresses these goals, and we anticipate ongoing discussions and again, potential relief sought through an ATEX to this application. Next slide. In summary, the applicants are seeking a zoning text amendment to establish a new special Brooklyn Navy Yard district that modifies regulations with respect to use, bulk, ground floor streetscape, open space, parking, loading, and the waterfront area, and a zoning map amendment to map the newly created special district and change an R6B, M12, and M31 district to an M21 district. These actions would facilitate the long-term expansion of the Brooklyn Navy Yard through the construction of an additional 4.6 million square feet of space for a total of 11 million square feet of industrial, commercial, and community facility uses. And I will note that, we at the agency are excited to be at this important milestone for this project, and that the community board will be receiving this application and advancing it in the public review process very expeditiously. They have scheduled their public hearing this Wednesday, June 9th, and the executive committee vote will be happening on June 16th. And that's all for the presentation, and we'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Connie and Amrita. And even with that absolute tour de force of a presentation, given the complexity of the project, I anticipate that commissioners will have questions. We'll take a second to digest it and see who might have questions.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Maybe they could just repeat the presentation for us.
I think they must have it memorized, so they probably could. Okay, not seeing any, and being ever so pleased that the community board is so eager to review this that they've already scheduled their hearing on it so that they would be able to act on it prior to their summer recess. We will then certify this application. Thank you.
The sixth item on our agenda is a non-ULURP post-referral review of renewals of previously approved special permit and authorizations. Syed?
Good afternoon, commissioners. Next slide, please. The applicant Waterview at Greenpoint LLC requests first renewal of previously approved special permit and authorizations for a mixed-use development at 77 Commercial Street. Next slide, please. The project site is located on Newtown Creek in Greenpoint, Community District 1, Brooklyn. The site is at the intersection of Commercial Street and Manhattan Avenue. The Greenpoint landing towers are to the west of the site. The Greenpoint Manufacturing Design Center is to the east of the site at the end of Manhattan Avenue. The Pulaski Bridge is 2 blocks east of the Manhattan Avenue, connecting Greenpoint to Hunters Point South. Next slide, please. The site is zoned R6 with a 150-foot C24 overlay along Commercial Street. Under the Greenpoint Williamsburg rezoning for this area, the base FAR of 2.43 can be increased to 2.75 with inclusionary housing provisions. The building heights are limited to 65 feet within 100 feet of Commercial Street and may rise to 150 feet on the remaining portion of the lot. The commercial uses are permitted to an FAR of 2 within the C24 overlay. Next slide, please. In 2013, the City Planning Commission approved several actions to facilitate the development on applicant's site. The approved actions included a special permit for bulk waivers, authorizations to modify waterfront design standards, a zoning text amendment to permit adjacent city-owned park site to continue to generate floor area, and a chair's waterfront certification. Next slide, please. The development rights from the park site were sold in 2015 to owners of 77 Commercial Street for 200 units of affordable housing to be developed on the applicant site, and a payment of $8 million towards the development of a park on the adjacent city-owned site. The special permit and authorizations approved in 2013 did not become effective until 2015, when applicant finalized the transfer of development rights to their site. Special permit and authorizations were valid for 4 years until May 2019, and the applicant filed a renewal application in March prior to the expiration date. Next slide, please. The prior approvals and the transfer of development rights would facilitate a mixed-use development at 77 Commercial Street. That will have a 6 to 8 story base with 2 residential towers, 30 and 40 stories in height. The base of the building will accommodate 200 units of affordable housing, 25,000 square feet of commercial space, and a 6,000 square feet of community facility space that would front on Commercial Street. The development would have a 320 space attended parking garage under the base of the building. Next slide, please. The applicant will also provide approximately 35,000 square feet of public open space, which is 9,000 square feet more than required by the zoning. Pursuant to waterfront zoning, the project will have a 40-foot wide and 228-foot long shore public walkway. The shore public walkway would accommodate a future connection to the proposed Box Street Park to the west. The project will also provide a 30-foot wide upland connection and a visual corridor on the western lot line. The applicant will also provide an additional pathway from Commercial Street to Shore Public Walkway along the eastern lot line to avoid a dead end at the eastern corner of the Shore Public Walkway. Next slide, please. The special permit granted in 2013 provided height waivers that would allow the North Tower to rise to 404 feet or 40 stories, and the South Tower to rise to 305 feet or 30 stories above the maximum permitted heights of 150 feet on the site. The increased heights of the buildings were necessary to accommodate the floor area acquired from the adjacent city-owned lot. The approved tower heights of 30 and 40 stories are consistent with the allowable heights along Greenpoint Williamsburg waterfront as permitted by the 2005 Greenpoint Williamsburg rezoning. Next slide, please. The applicant also received setback waivers for the base of the building. These waivers would allow a better articulation of massing of the base building and would allow affordable units in that building to have 9 feet floor to ceiling heights as the market rate units. Next slide, please. In addition to the special permit waivers, the applicant received authorizations to modify the design standards of the waterfront regulations to better design public open spaces and address waterfront resiliency issues by raising the Shore Public Walkway and the buildings on the site. Next slide, please. The applicant requests the renewal of the special permit and authorizations pursuant to section 1143 for an additional 3 years until May 5, 2022. The applicant in their discussion of findings states that neither the project nor the proposed site plan or its contexts have changed, and the project continues to meet all the findings required by the original grants of the special permit and authorizations. Applicant's statement of findings is in the briefing package. Next slide, please. The application was referred out to Community Board 1 for 45 days in May of 2019. The Community Board did not submit a recommendation. However, in a phone conversation, the district manager said that their recommendation for original approvals of the 2013 application should be considered as their recommendation now. The Community Board's 2030 recommendation is summarized on this slide. The recommendation was primarily focused on the size of affordable units and their affordability index. The Community Board's recommendation is in your briefing package. Next slide, please. After the transfer of development rights in 2015, the applicant, MTA, and the city attempted to relocate MTA's emergency response unit outlined in purple from the park site into the base of the new building at 77 Commercial Street. During this special permit renewal period, the applicant and the MTA continued to negotiate, but concluded that the MTA's ERU could not be accommodated in the base of the new building. The city and the MTA will continue to look for a new site for MTA's emergency response unit facility. In this slide, the city-owned lot to the left is occupied by 2 MTA facilities. MTA's paratransit parking facility outlined in green occupies 4/5 of the park site and is being relocated to a new facility in Bronx. That relocation will be completed by the end of this year. The remaining MTA facility on the park site is their ERU outlined in purple, which will remain until the city and the MTA find a new location for it. Next slide, please. The Department of Parks will build the Box Street Park shown in this site plan around MTA's remaining facility fronting on Commercial Street, shown in gray. The new park will comprise 4/5 of the park site, and once the MTA's emergency response unit facility is relocated, the park will be extended to Commercial Street to include the entire site. This concludes my presentation, and I will be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Syed. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
Syed, I'm glad you ended your presentation with some more information about the Box Street Park. It's really frustrating that that one piece of the park is still not available. What's the timetable for building out the portions of the park that you did show the illustration for?
The MTA's paratransit facility will leave this space by the end of fall, I think. That's what the Parks Department told us. And they have 2 to 3 year period to finish the park.
Okay, but is the design pretty well set? Has the community board signed off on it?
Yes.
We're ready to start building it as soon as the MTA departs?
Yes, the design is, and the parks has shared this with us, and they have shown it to.
You know, it just demonstrates the challenges of these kinds of arrangements, because the $6 million has been sitting there since 2015, and it's now worth a lot less than it was then, and time's a wasting. So I do hope they can get going on it soon.
Other questions? Okay, then I will ask for an assent by show of hands to send a letter to the buildings department telling them that the special permit has been extended. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Syed.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Syed. The 7th item on our agenda is a city council scope determination for a zoning text amendment of the 3002 Newtown Avenue proposal. I will note that Commissioner Rompashad is recused from this item. The city council proposes to strike option 2 from the MIH options, leaving only option 1. Staff believe this modification is within scope.
And I will again ask for an assent by a show of hands to send a letter saying that it's within scope. Okay.
Show of hands.
Thank you.
For June 19th, 2021, staff have prepared a report on the 314 West 43rd Street project, and then also scheduled for a decision on Wednesday is 25 East 21st Street, the Gramercy condominium. Any questions on those? Not? That's the end of the formal agenda.
Great. I want to thank the commissioners again for another long session of some incredibly exciting projects making their way through. And we will have a short one hearing Wednesday ahead of us. So I'll see you then. Bye.